I'm Dr. Barry. I'm a licensed psychologist, and here I cover the legal aspects, psychological aspects of legal cases. It's Saturday, and we are going to hop right into today's case. I did want to mention Lawyer Lee is a great attorney. I follow her here on the YouTubes, and she covered this case from a legal perspective yesterday. And so, AC, Lawyer Lee actually covered this yesterday that if Chloe Driver is found not guilty by reason of insanity, it will be it'll be up to the court to determine when and if she ever does come out of a psychiatric hospital. And that will also be up to the doctors. And when somebody is found not guilty by reason of insanity, those doctors want to make sure that the person is no longer a danger to themselves and others. I have some concerns about this case because it sounds like Chloe has still been in contact with Z, and we are going to go back to day 3 of trial real quick. So this is probably going to take, because I think it's important for us to hear the interaction between Chloe and the detective and Z. So the detective was on the stand and presented this information, and I really just want to start here. If you know nothing about this case, welcome. This case is a heavy one. And so if you're not in a great place emotionally, this case may be tough because it involves the death of a 13-month-old baby. And the mother likely was having mental health issues. Now, do those mental health concerns reach the level of not guilty by reason of insanity? I'm going to try to push a button and hopefully it doesn't. Okay, good. I don't know if it's going to reach the NGRI requirement for the state of Georgia. This case does come out of Georgia, and it's a very, very heavy case. So I just want to make that warning as we dive into this one. All right, and if anybody watched my coverage of one of the most explosive witnesses I think I've ever seen in my life, Jason. So I covered Jason's testimony from day 2. That's one of my last live videos. I have all of my prior coverage linked below. Jason was woo. So, but when he was describing Chloe, I did feel like he was describing manic behavior. Somebody asked in the chat over on Lawyer Lee, why did I not think that she had postpartum depression? So, postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, that is where somebody is like they're so exhausted with parenting, their psychosis and depression is so bad that they make that they're not in the right frame of mind. To me, it sounded like this was an attempt to unalive herself and the baby to escape a situation. And that did not sound like postpartum depression to me at all. And also, somebody asked, well, what about dissociative identity disorder? And that is where somebody has a break from reality and they are dissociating and often don't remember anything about what happened. And based on the cross-examination of the expert, of the defense expert, the expert that the defense called, based on the cross-examination of that expert, I think there's another expert that Chloe went into details of exactly what she did. That she has a very detailed memory, and with dissociation or a blackout, you would not remember that. So she's not saying I don't remember what I did. She clearly remembers exactly what happened, and we're going to get there. So let's start with the call while Chloe is in the hospital right after this incident, and the detective is facilitating a conversation between Chloe and Benyamin Z. Brian. He had 3 names, all same person. He is the one that was 38 years old when Chloe was 7. It sounds like he might have hid her in his parents' basement, and, like, there's a lot of question marks there. And I wanna remind us that 2 things can be true at the same time. That she could have been in this difficult, horrible relationship that we wouldn't want, anybody to be in. And also, she could have the decision, did she understand the wrongfulness? I think in the past, so back in like the 90s and early 2000s, these cases were rare. I wish these cases were rare. I really, really wish that these things were rare. Welcome, welcome. All right, let's get into this part of the trial. This is from day 3.
Taking the money and not letting me just buy land and be with her. As long as she needed you had a whole roof to take care of. And blame me for all the problems. You blame her for all the problems.
No, you were blaming yourself for everybody in the world's pain. You were saying you can control everybody. You were blaming yourself for everything.
Let's be constructive here.
Just the day before.
Let's not blame anybody.
Just the day before.
Yes, you constantly told me.
Just the day before. That whole teaching that came out just before we left. They said the moral was. Jason said the moral was, remember who you are.
So what teaching was that?
It's not your fault.
And why did they?
I said the moral is, it's not your fault.
Except everybody treated me like it was. I always insisted if I'm moved first. Hey, listen to me. I don't think this is getting anywhere.
I wanted to hear something a little more specific.
The girl always hated. That's why we bring us indifferent. No? Okay. Okay. She said the girl always hated. That's why we bring us indifferent with these places. Practicing. Oh. Separate us. You separated the girls?
They were in different rooms.
Why?
As we said in the interview, because it was very negligent. They considered everything that just happened. But I felt like everybody was very happy because the context of that going on our way to get land. We were all seemingly pretty excited about it. I felt like Chloe was very uplifted about just this one big single big air farm.
She even asked. She said it felt wrong. She said, I thought it felt wrong. I even asked.
I just said that's enough for you because I figured that they were trying to be expressed and they said they're 100% bigger for it than mine.
Okay.
That was all. And
Are you ready to end this conversation?
almost. Yes, you did.
And just what? Was that good? Do you want it? And
So she just wanted a normal life for her and her child. The jury is going to have access to all of this. So this goes on. They have this whole conversation back and forth. I think the most important part is what she wrote. because with this is going to be used to assess her state of mind around the time that all of this happened. If I was on the jury, I would put more weight on the things she said and wrote right after the incident than the things that she said after she's met with a lawyer, after all of that has happened. That's what I would personally do. I think and some of her search history is problematic as well. And so and this is true. I was in the same state for almost 2 months, getting worse, and nobody cared. And, she was getting worse and worse. They gave her the CBD, and that seemed to increase her paranoia. Everybody has different interactions, different things. And so this is the detective that she was talking with at that time. I want to skip ahead to some of the forensics because they're going to go through things from her search history and specific things from her phone. Before we listen to the defense mental health expert, I think having a good understanding of this, I think that's going to be important as we go into the next testimony.
And in terms of the function of your role as a post-certified investigator with the district attorney's office, what does that look like in terms of working together with the investigating agency, like in this case, Canton Police Department? Once they make an arrest, how does that sort of impact your role and how you interact with that agency?
So we are here to assist the law enforcement agencies during or after the arrest. We further investigate because once they make the arrest, they still investigate the case, but there's some things that they can't do that we are able to further investigate, such as reviewing, in this case, cell phone extractions and listening to jail calls and things like that. We have a good relationship with our local law enforcement officers, and they usually involve us on the front end, which is very helpful to the investigation and prosecution of the case.
Okay. How long have you been involved in this case?
Since the incident date of December the 8th of 2020.
Okay. And what was your involvement in that case on December the 8th?
So the Special Victims Unit was created in October of 2020, and I was assigned as the investigator to the unit. Oftentimes, law enforcement will reach out to us with certain cases, and they reached out to us in this case. And so members of our office traveled to the Canton Police Department on the incident date.
On December the 8th?
Yes.
Okay. What was happening at the police department when you went there on December the 8th?
They were conducting the interviews. All parties were.
Okay, so I'm going to skip through this part because I want to get to the actual testimony about the phone extractions and the things that were on the devices. They get it generates these reports. It looks like they took 3 of the phones and generated reports. And they're just confirming that this was all information that was received. All right, so let's go from here. They're going to search for a specific word in the data extraction.
All right, Jared. What are we looking at here?
Trigger warning for the KILL word. Okay, so that's this, in my opinion, sounds premeditated. Okay.
So this is an extraction report that I generated. And so the searched item was kill. And so this is the report that the UFED reader generated.
Okay, so you were able to go into that UFED reader, do a search term for the word kill, and these are the things that populated?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so in item number 1, the left column where they're numbered, what was the term searched on her phone?
Killing somebody to save them.
Okay, and what was the date of that?
November the 25th of 2020.
Okay, and then in 2 and 3, we see the same search terms?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then in line 4, what was searched?
Killing because the world is fake.
All right, and this is a 1-page report that you generated with 8 search items.
And a lot of people were like, why would they have Jason testify? And Jason, the individual from day 2, who was in orange and was spouting these unorthodox beliefs, would be putting it nice. Like, he was saying these out there things, but these are things that the group believed. The group had this belief that they're about like reality, and I don't, but they were there, but that wasn't a separate psychosis. Now, somebody that's in a vulnerable mental state in a group like that can cause additional harm. So once again, two things can be true at the same time. But I think within that group, I think they had weird things about the world being real. I think they had weird ideas about that.
Was that all of the information that related to the word kill?
Yes, ma'am. As far as the searched items, yes, ma'am.
Okay, you said as far as the searched items, are there different places in the phone or categories of content you can go look in?
There are on the left-hand side when you're doing or you're searching the phone. There are different categories that you can search within. You can search within text messages. You can search within web history, web searches, and you can also search in searched items. So this was inside the searched items in the phone.
Okay, so you narrowed the word kill in the things that have been searched on that phone.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, I'm going to publish States Exhibit 129. What are we looking at in States Exhibit 129?
This is an extraction from the cell phone. Neck was the key term used. This is something also that Detective Cruz had notated in her report, so that's why I searched for neck.
Okay, and in line item 1, what do we see was searched and on what date?
How to snap a neck, and that was on December the 2nd of 2020.
Okay, and had that same term been searched on prior dates?
Yes, also on November the 30th of 2020.
And then,
We're not really going to listen to all of the cross-examination, but with the cross-examination, they're going to bring up, that doesn't specifically say the neck of a child. Like the defense is going to say, you don't know exactly who she was considered. Like that's what the defense is going to say.
I'd like to go to publish States Exhibit 130. And tell the jury, how is this web history report in States Exhibit 130 different from the searched items report we just looked at?
So like I explained earlier, this was the search within the web history rather than the searched items. So I put in the keyword neck inside the web history to search for that.
Okay. And does this show in line 1, is that a Google search?
It is.
And what did she search?
It's how to snap a neck.
Okay. And what was the date of that?
That was December the 2nd of 2020.
Okay. And then in web history, does it also show websites that are visited?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So in line 2, what was the sort of website that was visited in relation to the search term neck?
It's the www.quora.com. And it returned how hard is it to kill someone by twisting their neck. And this is movies, make it look really easy. How much force would be needed? As a question.
All right. And what was the date of that?
That was December the 2nd of 2020.
Okay. And then item 3, is that a similar web page?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then items 4 and 5, is that the same Quora website you already referenced?
It is. It appears the date is different.
Okay. That was visited on multiple dates?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let me go back to the first one. We have the first one being December the 2nd in line item 2?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then in line item 3?
December the 1st, 2020.
Okay. And item 4?
December the 1st, 2020.
And item 5?
It is November the 30th of 2020.
Okay. And item 6?
November the 30th of 2020,
Okay.
as
And
well as 7.
item 7 is, what is that?
That is a Google search.
Okay. Another Google search of how to snap a neck?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And item 8?
So that was concerning to me because this is going back. This wasn't just that day. This wasn't just in that moment, because often when you think of NGRI, you're thinking about something that happened in that moment. And because of that, we're going to see. So the defense, I think, is going to rest sometime next week. The state is going to likely have some rebuttal witnesses. I'm guessing the state is going to have some rebuttal. They're thinking they might have this to the jury by mid next week, that they are on schedule. So they started this case on, I think, Tuesday. Yes, I think it was Tuesday. Maybe it was Monday, because they had 4 days of trial this past week. And this case has been moving very, very, very fast. So they're going to get to it in this testimony that the CBD was tested and it was only CBD. There wasn't anything else in it besides CBD.
November the 30th, 2020, had a snap a neck.
And then what are these at the bottom?
These appear to be links to Walmart. I'm not sure, maybe the word neck may be embedded
In the item number?
in the item.
Okay.
Or it might have been, yes, it is embedded. I see it. Could be an item related to a neck.
Okay. All right. And then those were specific to a key term. Are you also able, in going through the UFED reader of the larger phone extraction, to narrow searched items based upon a particular date range?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And were you asked to generate a report of all searches on her device for a particular date range?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was the date range that you generated?
I believe that was November the 1st of 2020 to the incident date of December the 8th of 2020.
Okay. So in States Exhibit 131, that's already been admitted.
So they're going to admit that okay, let me go back. Okay, let's keep this going.
And does this larger report contain the searched items? Killing someone to save them, killing someone because the world is fake. Are they contained in this larger search term report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You said it's November 1st.
November 1st of 2020 to December the 8th. Yes. All right. And in States Exhibit 61, which is the all the search terms, were there search terms in there that indicated Ms. Driver might be looking to track?
So we are here for the interruptions and the questions, okay? So the defense's opening talked about this. The state kind of breezed over the fact that, so the defense said she was 16 years old. So she ran away from home around 16 years old and ended up in Georgia. I believe she's from Tennessee. She was in Georgia and she had a boyfriend at the time. She ran into Benyamin, Brian. She ran into him at a bus stop and they exchanged information. And she went on with her life. Around 17 years old, she broke, like her and that boyfriend broke up and she reached out to Z. Z was 38 years old. 38 years old. And in some states that's not illegal, but it's not more like that's weird. Like what does a 38-year like so to me a 38-year-old getting with a child, that's about control to me. That like she has no life experience, like that's not appropriate in my opinion. If my 16-year-old or 17-year-old was in a relationship with a 38-year-old, like I would have an issue. And in the state of Georgia, I didn't look up their age of consent because it might have been illegal. And the fact that they alluded to the fact, because with Jason, they tried to ask if he was aware that she was living with Brian, Z, Benyamin, that she was living in his parents' basement with him and he was hiding her from them. And Jason was like, oh no. Oh, like I know his mother. There's no way she would know what was happening in her house. But it sounded like that could be totally true. And so that was how. And often, so individuals that are at risk of getting caught up with groups like this are often looking for some type of enlightenment. They're looking for, like a positive, like I think he offered this worldview that might have seemed intriguing to a young girl. When she met him, she was the first wife at the time. I don't know that she knew that his technical wife number one, I'm not sure how to say it, but she had a child with him and escaped in the middle of the night. I don't know that Chloe was aware of that. And within a few years, it goes from just the two of them to he adds on 2 additional wives and she has a baby. With the baby, The baby did not have a birth certificate, did not have any legal identification. And because the baby, because I think the defense brought up the fact, or maybe it was the prosecution, I'm not sure. It came up in opening statements that they left the hospital before all the paperwork was done for her to be assigned a birth certificate. And I think Chloe wanted to leave, and I think she wanted to take her child with her, but I don't think he was gonna let her do that. I do. So I think that they did have to establish paternity, and they were able to issue a death certificate, but it might have made things complicated. I'm sure they know, like, there are probably other groups that might do similar things, so they're probably aware of things like this. It's so I don't know that the group has a name. They seem to be, yeah, I don't know that the group has a name. Um, all right, I'm gonna keep it going.
Travel in any way?
Yes, ma'am. There were searches about a bus ticket, traveling with a child. I don't know if child was the actual term. It might have been baby, or it may have had her age, but
Okay.
So Chloe was 20 years old, and her child was 13 months old at the time of this incident. This incident happened in 2020. I believe she is 24 years old now. She looks very young. That's Chloe.
Stacy. All right, and on page 51, starting with search item 547, what was she searching?
547 was 12 tribes, community, single, woman with baby.
Okay, and what was the date of that?
That was November the 22nd of 2020.
Okay, and then item 551, what was she searching?
What does the Bible say about having more than one wife?
Okay. And in item 557,
Can God forgive me for being with a married man? Excuse me.
okay. And in item 561,
Can God forgive me for harming my husband?
all right.
So I think some of these searches, I think she was starting to question some of the group's beliefs. And I think she was starting to feel like it wasn't like that Z wanted these other wives, but that I think she was feeling bad about the relationship and almost like she was sinning. And I think that's going to come up in the expert testimony, almost like that the baby was a sin too. Like that's what is coming up in some of this.
Were you asked to generate a report specifically with regard to anything involving CBD?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Okay, I'm going to publish States Exhibit 132. All right. And this indicates it's searched items, so these things that would have been searched on the driver's device?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and starting with item number 1, what was searched and on what date?
Does CBD work first time? And that was on September the 12th of 2020.
Okay, and item number 2?
Does CBD work first time? September the 12th, 2020.
Okay, and 3?
Does CBD help with anger issues? September the 12th, 2020.
All right, and item 4?
And I would think if the CBD was making her psychotic, I would think she would have searched for that. But that's just my thought. My thought is if it was making the paranoia and all of that worse, I would expect to see a search for it, but maybe, I don't know. But that's just, and sometimes when somebody is paranoid, they don't realize that that's what they're experiencing, especially in a group that thinks that the world is out to get them anyway. So it would be difficult. So I do not pathologize somebody's religious beliefs. And what I mean by that is if I have a client that tells me that they talk with God, that they audibly hear God, I don't automatically say this client is hallucinating or something like that. I believe people can have spiritual experiences, and so I don't automatically do that. Now, if God is telling them to harm people, then that's like that can be a command auditory hallucination. That's where I say that faith shouldn't hurt. And once we start getting down those paths, when I was working in a psychiatric hospital, I remember there was a very severe case where the individual thought God was telling them to harm themselves. And they specifically brought me into the rounds and the discussion. And I think I actually met with the individual because there were specific things within this person's beliefs that went against the delusion and the psychosis that they had. And that's where we were able to determine, yes, this individual is like this is not the family didn't believe this, like nobody else believed this, just this individual. And so I just wanted to add that part. I also believe in spiritual abuse or harm as well. And I do believe that within this group, that religion was being used to torment people. And I don't think I'm against that, of course.
Does CBD help with anger issues? September 12th, 2020.
Okay. Item 5.
Breastfeeding with CBD oil experience, September the 8th of 2020.
Okay. And number 6.
Breastfeeding with CBD oil experience, September 8th of 2020.
Okay. And are the next several the same date and same search term?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Looks like yes.
And then the item 10.
CBD oil and therapy for mental illness.
Okay. And do you know why that doesn't populate with a date in this extraction report?
I'm not sure exactly. Could have been something that was. How long is CBD in breast milk?
Okay. And number 12.
Does CBD help with depression?
Okay. And then finally, number 13.
I breastfed baby on CBD.
Okay. All right. With regard to the CBD in this case, I think we asked Mr. Spillers yesterday, states 87. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So now they're going to get into the fact that they did test the CBD, and it was only CBD. So I wanted for us to hear some of those things as we now listen to the expert's testimony. This expert was asked to first do a competency evaluation. This expert, she is very, so it's Dr., y'all know me in names. And they had it earlier. Okay, I'm going to go back. I'm at like 1541 me in names. So Dr. McLennan Garrett. So that is who is testifying today. I'm sorry, not because this was on Friday, but she is a forensic psychologist. She works for the state. And I believe the state was the one that requested her to come in and do a competency evaluation. And then she was later asked to come in and do an assessment of mental health at the time of the offense. I am also going to go deeper because there is this thing in Georgia called delusional compulsion. That is a part of the NGRI statute, the not guilty by reason of insanity. I think Georgia also has a guilty but mentally ill. And I think, and I don't know if the jury is going to have the option to possibly find her guilty but mentally ill, because she would be able to receive mental health treatment and then also be incarcerated if that's what's determined. If she is not guilty by reason of insanity, then she goes to a state hospital and only gets the mental health treatment. If she's found guilty, then she goes to a prison, and prisons do offer therapy. They do have, because she is on psychiatric medication, likely a mood stabilizer and an antipsychotic. And so she would still have access to those medications. Prisons do not want people that need medications to not be on like what they need. All right, let's keep it going. So we're going to go right into her testimony.
I don't specifically recall what came originally. I believe I got the investigative summary up front and an evaluation from a privately retained psychologist. And I'm probably an indictment. I don't remember specifically what came.
Okay. Your report, you did two different reports in this case. Is that
That's
right?
correct.
You did a competency evaluation and a criminal responsibility evaluation, right?
Yes, sir.
And I was going to deal with the difference in that in just a minute. You touched on it a little bit. What is the difference between a competency evaluation and a criminal responsibility evaluation?
So a competency evaluation is how somebody's doing right at the time you do the evaluation. It's sort of a slice in time. Are they currently able to understand what's happening in court and able to work with their attorney in their own defense? A criminal responsibility evaluation is how the person was doing at the time of the alleged crime. So that answer could be very different depending on how much time has passed. So we have to look back and see what was going on in their life at the time of the crime.
So in this case, the criminal responsibility piece is looking at Ms. Driver around the December 8, 2020 timeframe, correct?
Correct.
The competency evaluation is looking at her at the time that you conduct that actual evaluation,
That's correct.
because that is geared towards her case moving forward and whether she can be an assistance with that case and understands what she's going through, right?
Mhm.
And in this case, you did the competency evaluation. You found her to be competent to stand trial ultimately, right? That's not an issue that you're talking about today.
That's correct.
When you did that competency evaluation, how long did you spend with her when you conducted that initial interview?
About an hour and 45 minutes.
Okay.
She's going
Actually, sorry, at that time it was 2 hours and 35
Okay. Yeah.
minutes.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to make sure we were correct. That was in August of 20.
So so everybody has a different experience. So I have what's called level 3. So I have one because there are different milligrams, there are different things. Check with your doctor because some things can impact health stuff, and so you always have to talk with your doctor to see what works best. This is not medical advice. I'm not a medical doctor. So for me personally, I use it as a sleep aid or muscle relaxant, or for like anti-inflammatory stuff. Like that's what I personally use it for. I think I mentioned when we go to Disney, there's a whole bunch of walking. Or if I didn't take it international because because when we went to Jamaica did not allow for even THC-free CBD. There can be THC in CBD. There are some that have both, and so people have to check all those things. But yes. All right. Let's keep it going. And hi from the future. She's gonna see that later. All right, let's keep it going.
2022, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that was 2 hours and 35 minutes at the Cherokee County Detention Center with Ms. Driver.
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall in that report, do you have the competency report with you as well?
I'm gonna speed it up just a little bit. My brain can't do normal. We're gonna do 1.25. We'll see if that's enough.
I do.
I think this is the same for both evaluations, but you listed sources of information that you had in that evaluation. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And you listed several things, including Ms. Driver's, some records from Ms. Driver at the jail, hospital, medical records from her at the jail, correct?
That's correct.
Reviewed her Wellstar Kennestone Hospital records as well.
I did.
Specifically some handwritten notes that she had made during the course of that stay at the hospital. Is that fair?
That's correct.
You said you had the indictment, a summary report from the City of Canton Police regarding their investigation. And you had a evaluation that had been conducted by a privately retained expert, in this case, Dr. Roberta.
Y'all, I forgot to mention the fact that this psychologist, she practiced law for 6 years. So she first got a JD. She first got her Juris Doctorate and practiced law for 6 years and decided that she wanted to do forensic. So then she got a PsyD to specifically take a look at forensic. I think she knew all along that she wanted to be a forensic evaluator. And so she has a good understanding of the law, even though that's not required. But a forensic expert that's been a lawyer, that adds some additional understanding of the law. I thought that was super cool. Just random stuff. Y'all know me.
eval too. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you had the opportunity, I presume, to review all of those things before you went and saw Ms. Driver?
Some things I reviewed before and some things I reviewed after.
Okay.
Like to get her jail records, I had to get her to sign a release of information. So I got that information after.
Okay. Okay. So when you went and met with her in August, she signed a release form for you to obtain the records from the jail.
That's correct.
And you reviewed those after your evaluation?
But before I read the report.
Yes, absolutely. Did you ever reach out to myself or Ms. Trethewey to obtain any additional information that you would need for your evaluation of Ms. Driver on either incident?
I don't recall reaching out to counsel.
Okay. So tell me specifically, when you meet with Ms. Driver, how do you go about discussing these issues with her? I assume there's some sort of rapport you're trying to establish with her so she can be honest with you. Is that fair?
There's sort of
So I like this part because they do explain the difference between clinical and forensic. And clinical is about treating. You want to, like, often in clinical, you're going to believe most of what your client says, and you're really not going to push back that much. With forensic, you are highly aware because you're involved, because there's court involvement. You're going to be aware that the person might be lying to you, and you're going to be looking for inconsistencies. Like you're not going to take everything at face value. You're going to look for collateral evidence. And so, yeah.
we call it sort of a forensic report.
Okay.
There's, we're not overly friendly, but we're obviously, accepting and empathetic. We always start with an advisement of what their rights are. We let them know that it's not confidential. We let them know that they do not have to answer our questions, that they have the right to consult with their attorney, and that anything that they tell us can be included in a report, and we might have to come to court and testify, and that the information can be used at sentencing.
And Ms. Driver had already been through an evaluation with a privately retained psychologist that you were aware of, right?
That's my understanding.
So did she express to you that she understood what this process was going to be like?
She did.
Okay. She didn't have any issues communicating with you about any of the questions you were asking her?
She did not.
So are there any specific types of tests that you do while you're conducting this evaluation, or is it really just talking to her about her experience?
Sometimes there's testing done. I did not do any testing in this case. I spoke with her. I did a clinical interview. I did a competency interview. And then when I went back, I did a criminal responsibility interview.
Would the testing be done more if you believe that there were cognitive issues with Ms. Driver?
If there's cognitive issues, if there's specific concerns that they might be feigning or exaggerating symptoms, if there's comprehension issues, yeah.
Okay. You did not have any concerns about any of those issues as it related to Ms. Driver?
I did not.
Okay. So when you talked to her, do you recall what the first set of topics were about this particular case with Ms. Driver?
About the case or about just the first topic covered in the interview?
Your interview.
So some forensic experts do ask the family. So sometimes they do check in with the family and interview the family as well. It doesn't sound like this individual did. It does look like if she could request records. And so there probably was a family history, a medical history that's in the jail records. And but it does not look like she talked to any of the other family members. For both evaluations, for competency and mental state at the time of the crime, it looks like she talked with her for a total of 4.5 hours. And she did not do any psychological testing. For me, that's kind of I would have at least wanted a personality assessment. I would have personally wanted like a Rorschach or something. If we're looking at psychosis, I personally like that. I don't know if so she works for the state, and I think she thought she was able to come to her diagnosis and everything just based on all the information that was there. I think her diagnosis was I get to a very similar one. I'm on the fence of bipolar with psychotic features, or because she's gonna say schizoaffective disorder, and I didn't assess her. We're just and yes, often schizophrenia and bipolar disorder would often run in the family if when schizoaffective disorder is diagnosed. So I would want to know if bipolar disorder, because I would suspect someone in the family has a bipolar 1 or 2 diagnosis. It would be very rare for all of a sudden only one person in a family to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder. That would be very, very rare. She's also going to diagnose her with a personality disorder, and we will talk about that once we get to there.
Background information.
Okay. And what did you learn about Ms. Driver's background?
I learned that she had sort of an unstable early childhood, that her family moved around and she felt like they were kind of cold, but that she also left the family several times. She left and moved in with boys. She even left the state and moved in with a boy. She had some suicidal ideation early on, some self-injurious behavior, and we're talking about like cutting. She would cut her arms. She, I think, attempted an overdose on sleeping pills. She also abused substances. She started at a young age using marijuana and then cocaine and experimenting with some other drugs as well.
Did you ask her if she had ever been evaluated or diagnosed as a teenager or earlier on in her childhood?
She stated that when she was younger, she did get some treatment. She saw a doctor. She wasn't sure it was like her pediatrician or a psychiatrist, but that she did see a doctor who prescribed her some antidepressants early on, but she did not take them.
Okay. And you're not aware of any records or evaluation reports that you've ever seen about her?
I've not seen any documentation of that.
Okay. And after discussing her background, what would your next topic of discussion generally be with an evaluation?
In the competency evaluation, the next step would be to talk to her. Well, in both of them, the next step would be to talk to her about her current mental status, how she was doing at the time of the interview.
Okay. So let's skip off the competency evaluation piece. Let's just focus on the criminal responsibility.
So we would do that, the mental status in both evaluations.
Okay. Was there when do you recall doing the second interview with her regarding the criminal responsibility piece?
It was about a month later, in September of 2022.
And was there a difference in Ms. Driver's personality when she met with you both in August and September?
In August, she was upbeat. She described herself as being excited. She talked about not really sleeping and having a lot of projects she was working on in the jail. She said she was annoying her roommates by singing and dancing and doing gymnastics. So she was really very upbeat the first time I spoke to her. When I returned a month later, she showed signs that she had been crying before she came into the meeting. She was disheveled. Her hair wasn't done. Her jail clothing was disheveled, and she expressed sadness and feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness.
Are those symptoms, or those signs of things that you saw from her just in her personality to you, are they things that you would pick up on in the nature of your evaluation of her?
That's pretty much the purpose of the mental status exam, is to look for things like that, because they can show sadness and feelings of hopelessness, feelings of worthlessness, feelings of being persecuted, sleeping too much or sleeping too little, changes in appetite, changes in activity level, change in speak, the rate at which people speak, the rate at which they move. All of that can be suggestive of a depressed state, of being in an episode of depression. And then the other end, the being excited, not sleeping at all, having a lot of projects, really being in, like, a lot of people really love being that way because they get things done.
Often with bipolar disorder, the mania is the hardest part to have the person be consistent with their medication around. Now, sometimes with manic behavior, it might be a lot of projects, but nothing might get completed or done. Some people might, some people might get a lot of things done, but it's this reduced need for sleep. Somebody being able to stay up for 3, 4, 5, staying up for days, but then there's a crash that happens. And there can also sometimes be some psychosis that goes in there. With schizoaffective disorder, you would have psychotic symptoms with no mood symptoms. And with bipolar disorder with psychotic features, you would have mood and psychosis at the same time. And when mood is stable, you typically would not see psychosis. And that can be difficult to kind of parse out. And I probably would have, unless she was meeting criteria for schizophrenia, and I really would have wanted to understand this group because, but she is going to explain why she thinks certain things were paranoia. The defense direct examination was short. Okay, good. Maybe it wasn't. Let's see where the the cross-examination's back there. So it wasn't too short. Okay. We're going to keep it going.
Have a lot of things that they can do, and they have a lot of energy, and they don't feel like they need to sleep. So they'll stay up for days on end without getting any sleep. And that would be a sign of mania or hypomania, which is sort of a subclinical level of mania.
Okay. part of the sources that you were reviewing in this case, including her records from the jail. Is that fair?
Yes,
And those records included evidence regarding medication that she was taking.
that's correct.
Can you describe the medication that she was on while she was in the jail at that point in time, or even from when she came into the jail until you met with her?
So they actually changed her medications a lot.
I love questions. So in order to meet criteria for schizoaffective disorder, there are different types. So there's like a depressed type. So the person would meet criteria for major depression and schizophrenia, and then they would make sure that those symptoms that the appropriate criteria are met. Y'all are going to make me go to I still have my handy dandy DSM-5 right here. There are different types of schizoaffective disorders. Some people have the depressed, and I might look it up. If I'm wrong with what I'm saying, I will look that up. But there is a bipolar type where the individual meets criteria for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, and there's this. And they meet criteria for schizoaffective disorder versus bipolar disorder with psychotic features being a better diagnosis. I hope that helps.
They tried different things, and she frequently said she didn't want to be taking any medications at all, and she would refuse the medication. So the medications were adjusted and changed and moved around a lot. When she first came in, she was taking medications to address mood. She was taking medications to address anxiety, and she was taking medications to address symptoms of psychosis, like hearing things, seeing things that aren't really there, disorganized thoughts, things like that.
Can you describe specifically the medication that she was on? Do you recall?
Can I refer to my notes?
Absolutely. Yes.
I skipped the part, but it's going to come up in cross-examination where they talked about that her and Z have remained in communication to the point where the jail would try to block his number and he would call from different numbers. And so there's also that. And I think they were blocking the number because they likely think he's not a great influence. I don't know. Like, I would suspect he might not be great for her mental health. That's just my own personal thought. But yeah.
So when she first came in, she was exhibiting signs of depressed mood, hopelessness, suicidal ideation, and labile affect, which is how you present your mood, the outward expressions of emotion, and labile means that it moves up and down. So she had shifting moods, shifting emotions. So they were looking at a possible unspecified psychosis according to the records. So she was prescribed Prozac, which is an antidepressant, Visceral, which is actually an antihistamine, but it's given for.
And sometimes for some individuals with bipolar disorder, Prozac can sometimes trigger mania. So that's something that people have to watch out for. If they start an SSRI, if they start an antidepressant, and all of a sudden they get this like boost, but it's not like because normally SSRIs help you feel balanced. So not low, not too high. Like normally it helps things stable out. Some people feel blunted affect, like they feel like it's hard to feel anything. And that's where talking with your prescriber is really important. But yeah.
For anxiety, and Zyprexa, which is an antipsychotic.
And that is, you said that was when she first initially was in the jail. Were those symptoms that she was being observed with in the jail, were they consistent with the, I guess, diagnosis or impressions that the medical staff at Kennestone had of her when she was at the hospital?
So my medical records, I believe, from Kennestone were incomplete.
Okay.
I only had about 118 pages from Kennestone Hospital, and there was only one psychiatric report in that file that I had.
Okay.
And at the time of that evaluation, she was sedated and did not give any information.
Okay. So that didn't really give you any information.
So I didn't really have any information about her mental health from the hospital.
Okay.
I started from the jail.
And so from the initial arrival at the jail and the description you just gave of her mood and her conditions that she was showing, how did that change over the course of the next months while she was incarcerated?
She continued to express a lot of paranoid ideation, thinking people out to get her, out to harm her, talking about her behind her back. She also expressed a lot of what we call delusions of reference, which is when you see something that's sort of innocuous and you interpret it as having some special meaning to you. So a lot of people will say, oh, I was getting a message from the TV or the radio, like it was talking directly to me. Not that I was hearing what they were saying, but there was something underlying it, a coded message that was just for them. Other people will think that they're getting instructions from people's facial expressions, body language, objects, and things like that. So she was describing getting a lot of coded messages from sounds she heard, things that facial expressions of people in the jail, that she was doing something wrong, that she shouldn't be there, things like that.
Those records, those
So they might be on the witness list. I'm not sure. From everything I've heard, so we see the gallery sometimes. So, and you never see her look back, because sometimes when when friendly people are in court, now the camera isn't on her all the time. So I personally haven't seen her look back. Um, Fulton County just got in trouble for the conditions of their jail. Like, that's something interesting to look up. I saw that release today, that the conditions of their jail were so bad. I don't know if it was Department of Justice, but like a federal agency came in and investigated them, and they have inhumane conditions, and they're going to have to make some significant changes. Like, it's so bad. They said that there were the same amount of stabbings in that jail in 1 month as like another jail that has 2-3 times the population had in a whole year. That there were significant failures there. Ugh, like, it's I listened to the report, and it was bad. Can you elaborate on the term delusions of reference? Yes. I also want to talk about distinguishing between schizoaffective disorder um, from schizophrenia, depressive and bipolar disorders with psychotic features. And so, criterion C, let me go back and take a look at criterion C. Okay, hopefully they have it here. Is designed to separate schizoaffective disorder from schizophrenia. Criterion B is designed to distinguish schizoaffective disorder from depressive or bipolar disorder with psychotic features. More specifically, schizoaffective disorder can be distinguished from depressive or bipolar disorder with psychotic features based on the presence of prominent delusions or hallucinations for at least 2 weeks with the absence of a major mood episode. So that's where I mentioned that in order to prove schizoaffective disorder, because they have to meet criteria for schizophrenia. So you would have to have a 2-week period where you have the delusion and you have no depression or manic behavior. And often the individual is often hospitalized. So normally people get a schizoaffective disorder when they're in a psychiatric hospital for a month or two for a period of time, where they're able to observe them and they see, oh, they still, like, their mood is stable, but they still have these psychotic symptoms. And so it can be very, very difficult to diagnose. I often refer the individual for testing, but what often happens is sometimes the individual is very difficult to stabilize outpatient, and we talk about everything and everybody, and so sometimes the hospital is the one that ends up making that diagnosis. That's what I've personally seen. The treatment can be similar. So for somebody with bipolar disorder and I'm not a psychiatrist, okay, but there are like, you can't just guesstimate, like it really has to be specific. And for me, I like to err on the side of caution. Now, she had access to a lot of prison records, and there are some other evaluations. There is probably like daily monitoring of her behavior. They're probably checking in with her mood on a regular basis and all of that. So it might have, I don't know, but yeah. So please know anything in this book, okay? So if you ever do decide to get you a DSM-5, please know that you do not have everything, okay? So what I mean by that is that and I'm going to save this question because I need to come back to it. What I mean by that is a person can have difficulty with attention, but it doesn't impact their daily life to the point where it's debilitating. So in order to have a diagnosis from this book, you don't just have symptoms, you also have to have impairment. Okay. So you have to have both. Yes. It is a very, very pricey book. Don't get and so there are, if you're looking up a specific question, it's often available online. there's information online about all this. There was a question about delusions of reference. Let's go ahead and delusions of reference is a common psychiatric symptom that involves the belief that neutral events have personal significance. So if it's raining because I didn't eat breakfast and now I'm being punished because I didn't eat breakfast. Like it would be so a neutral thing, I'm deriving personal significance from it. Believing that others are communicating with you, believing that you are being referred to in public media when that's like it's clearly not happening, believing that objects or situations have purposely been arranged to convey a specific message, believing that animals are communicating complex messages, falsely believing that others are observing you. And so like you are the center and there are delusions where you are the center. That's how I think of delusions of reference. The reference is you. All right. Let's also go on ahead and talk about delusional compulsion, because we've talked a lot on this channel about to be not guilty by reason of insanity, that there's this McNaughton rule, and that at the time of the incident, the person does not understand the wrongfulness of their actions. And so this is from Georgia state law. A person shall be found guilty of a crime when, at the time of the act, omission or negligence constituting the crime, the person, because of mental disease, injury, congenital deficiency, acted as he did because of a delusional compulsion. Oh, sorry. Well, not be found. My brain. So I skipped a word. A person shall not be found guilty of a crime when, at the time of all of this, the act was because of a delusional compulsion, as to such act which overmastered his will to resist committing the crime. So it's like this delusional compulsion took over you to do the crime. In short, delusional compulsion is when someone has a mental disorder that compels them to believe something that, if it were actually true, would justify their actions. So that's where the person that believes that their child is evil, and by doing this, but like it's not true, but like if it were true, it would kind of justify their actions. I'm not sure if they're going to get there in this one, but this expert is going to believe that she does meet criteria for this. But yeah, Georgia law has elaborated on this definition some and established a 3-part test to support a finding that a defendant is not guilty of a criminal act. Delusional insanity may be found when the will is so overmastered that there is no criminal intent in reference to the act. And it must appear not only that the defendant was actually laboring under a delusion, operating as a causative factor, but the delusion was such that, if true, would justify the act. And there's law for that from 1976. Wow. And then a person who argues delusional compulsion as a defense has the burden of proving that defense by a preponderance of the evidence. Georgia law presumes every person is of sound mind and discretion. Therefore, it is upon the defendant to prove that they were not of sound mind and discretion. Once the defense of mental health is raised, the court may blah, 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 the psychological evaluation. But so watching Lawyer Lee, that's where this part came up. I had never heard of this part. Like I had never heard. So this is my first NGRI case that comes out of Georgia. I do not believe that. I don't think I'll have to look up my Virginia laws to see. We're going back to some of the symptoms questions. Do the symptoms of bipolar increase with age? And so they can be managed with medication. So what's common is that an individual has their first manic episode between the ages of 15 or 16. And what's really common is like 17, 18, that early sometimes like as you transition to college. So early adulthood is really common, sometimes late teens. They're moving away from pediatric bipolar. Pediatric bipolar was diagnosed a lot, but then they added a diagnosis of disruptive mood dysregulation disorder because some kids that were diagnosed because of severe anger, because of severe behavior issues, they were diagnosed with childhood bipolar at the age of like 8 or 9 or even 6 sometimes. But then later they just had major depression. They didn't have bipolar disorder. And so the DSM-5 and 5-TR made changes. Do I not have the TR? Yeah, I do. TM. Maybe I do. I hope I have the text revision version. I might have to update if I don't. I believe she's been diagnosed with type 1. I don't think they gave the bipolar. So because they said schizoaffective disorder, they didn't say bipolar 1 or 2. She didn't give the specific type. She didn't give the specific type. All right. Because I think the TR only made minor changes. Okay. I'm almost positive the TR made very, very minor changes. And then coming back to this one, can you have schizoaffective disorder and schizophrenia? So those, because you would have to have major depression, like a major depressive episode out, and then schizophrenia, like, so it's a combination. The way I view it, it's a combination of those two things. So some people list every possible diagnosis, which frustrates the mess out of me. I like it to be like clear and plain. So if somebody was coming to me with let's say they have schizoaffective disorder, depressive type, they have ADHD, and maybe they have borderline personality disorder. That's how I would list it. But yeah, everybody kind of does things different. It should be uniform, but it's not. It's really not. All right. Let's go on ahead and get back to the testimony. All right.
Those reports that you're referencing, those are things that she was telling you about in the course of your evaluation too, is that right?
Those are things she told to the jail staff, that the jail staff documented in their records, and she also told me very similar things.
Okay. And in conducting your evaluation, that is one of the things that you are trying to look at in terms of the consistency of what she is telling, not just yourself, but other people that she's interacting with. Is that fair?
Yes, consistency, and especially if there's if it's detailed. So you look at if somebody's something really vague and then it changes. That is something that we are concerned that they might be making it up because they can't remember more detailed things to share over the time. So that's very vague. And if they do try to use something that's detailed, then the details might change over time. So we look for both of those things.
Okay. And for an example, you noted this in your report that she said to you that people are communicating with me through their body language and I'm not supposed to be here. Is that one of the things you recall her saying to you directly?
Yes, she said that in terms of how she was feeling in the jail, but she also said that she had felt those things before as well.
Okay. Before the incident day?
That's correct.
Okay. Did she talk to you about how long she had been feeling those paranoias, those concerns about how she was seeing and hearing things?
She told me that that actually started a long time ago when she was a teenager, and that she was feeling sort of a more generalized paranoia. She didn't give me details about what kind of thought she had as a teenager in terms of the paranoia. She also talked about having sort of magical thinking, which is when it's sort of the opposite of delusions of reference. So magical thinking is when you think that there's something about you that can control the world, even though there's no real connection. So she talked about being able to read minds and things like that and having a spiritual awakening. And that occurred prior to when she met her husband, but while she was using illicit substances as a teenager. And then she went off illicit substances, and I don't know whether she continued to experience delusions in between going off and when this occurred, but she said that the symptoms became particularly bad approximately 2 to 3 months before the alleged crime.
I would just also like to add that sometimes there can be magical thinking that's a symptom of borderline personality disorder as well. This false belief that my words, actions can cause or prevent undesirable events. And so they've researched it. It's a thing. And so yeah. I'll link webs. Okay, we'll just keep it going. If y'all have questions about that, let me know.
And why was that?
I think there's sort of a confluence of events. I think she started to feel worse. She suggested that she was starting to sort of question some of the things that she was being taught, and started to feel a little bit paranoid and was starting to experience those delusions of references. She was starting to see things and making them think that she needed to hurt herself, that she wasn't supposed to be in the universe, she wasn't supposed to be in the world. And that she reached out to her family, the family she was living with, and wasn't able to get help and was instead given CBD oil. And that once she started taking the CBD oil, that
When she talks about the family that she's living with, she's talking about her husband and the 2 other wives.
there was a big jump. She felt like it was very potent. That's how she felt. And that her paranoia and delusions of reference and magical thinking all increased sort of significantly and sharply after starting to take that drug.
Okay. Now, I'm going to kind of get to the CBD specifically. One of the things that you diagnosed her with was cannabis use disorder. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And is that based on the CBD that she was taking?
Yes, she believes it had THC. Now I have no idea what was in the cannabis oil she was taking.
Right.
But she believed that it was intoxicating, and she continued to take it, and it was causing her significant distress.
Did she explain to you that the CBD that she was using was being given to her by the husband in her life, Mr. Benyamin?
She did. She indicated that she had ordered some online, but that Mr. Benyamin, I've been calling him Mr. Joyce, so I'll try and whatever is most
We've got
consistent.
3 different names.
Yeah,
we're
so it's
trying
hard to keep
it
up.
clear.
But she said that he did not want her to use the commercial one, so he brought her one that was produced by a friend or brought to him by a friend. She didn't really know the source.
Okay. So what she was using was one that had been, what she told you she'd been using was one that had been provided by a third party, not the stuff that she ordered.
Correct.
Is it fair, Dr. Garrett, that the use of substances, illicit substances specifically, can influence or increase?
The only thing is there was not evidence that she was using illicit substances. So it was just the CBD, and there might have been some like natural mushrooms that they were, but none of that. Because I think they were assuming that the CBD might have had something in it, but they tested it and it didn't have anything in it. That's going to come up on cross-examination.
Someone's paranoia and delusions.
Yes. And even illicit and even legal drugs can do that. Anything that has sort of an intoxicating effect can negatively impact somebody's symptoms. So if you have, and cannabis is sort of well known for being something that causes people who don't have mental illness to have some level of paranoia. And so the addition of.
But she was tested at the hospital and she tested negative for cannabis. This doctor just didn't know that. She had no cannabis in her system. Chloe didn't have any.
Cannabis to somebody who has a pre-existing paranoia can increase, it can sort of ratchet that up and make that worse.
And your belief that the symptoms that she was reflecting to you in her earlier years or teenage years, were those caused by her mental health situation, or were those caused more by drug use?
It's difficult to say.
Okay.
It was a long time ago. So self-report is not hugely reliable for things that happened that long ago. But the way it usually works is either a substance can trigger an underlying mental health condition, can cause a new mental health condition, or can be a way of trying to medicate a condition that already exists. So those are the most common ways that we see, early mental health and substance use interact. Which one of those was at play in this case? I couldn't tell you for sure.
Now, you are familiar with the dynamic in which Ms. Driver was living during this incident that we're talking about in this case. Is that right?
Based on her descriptions.
Yes. Was that also information that you learned through other sources in this case?
There was some information included in witness statements given to the police that were summarized in the investigative summary.
Okay. And I don't want you to talk about anything that specific people said, but you're aware she was living in a polygamous or polyamorous relationship with Mr. Benyamin, right? There were multiple wives in their relationship. That's something that you were aware of.
Yes, she told me there was another woman before her, but that she left, and that she went with Mr. Benyamin, and then 2 other women joined later.
Okay. Did she describe to you
I'm going to speed it up to 1.5. I can slow it back down if it starts to get too fast. Okay. Because right now we're just kind of doing the history part and my brain is kind of going blah, blah, blah. It's good information, but I want to move through this a little bit faster.
Did Ms. Driver specifically describe?
And please know, and it might go too fast for his questions. It might end up going too fast. I might have to keep it at 1.25.
To you the nature of how her relationship with Mr. Benmichael was in the beginning and how it developed over the about three years she was with him?
She described meeting him when she was 16 years old, sitting at a bus station, I believe, and that she found him charming and intelligent and engaging. And he gave her his contact information. And about a year later, when she was 17, she reached out to him, and he accepted her in. And they began a romantic relationship at that point when he was 38 or 39 years old.
Does the age discrepancy between Mr. Benmichael and Ms. Driver at that time, did that cause you concern, or did that play into your consideration of her evaluation?
Yeah, it was one of several factors. Between her sort of unstable childhood, the sort of push and pull with her parents, returning to her parents, leaving her parents, things like that, her substance abuse and her young age all made her, in my view, particularly susceptible to wanting to be with somebody who's older and willing to take her in and protect her and things like that. So I felt like that may have been a factor in why she chose to join this group.
Okay. Did she describe to you the nature of the relationship she had with Mr. Benmichael early on when they met?
A little bit, not a lot. She did indicate that he got her off all drugs, that she was supposed to be very clean and was not able to use drugs anymore, that she tried marijuana one time at a drug circle and got in quite a bit of trouble for it, and then never did anymore again until a couple months before this incident. And that she basically described, him being a partner, that it was good and that she believed the things he told her and that she accepted the lifestyle.
And she accepted the lifestyle when the other two women came in to that group. Is that
That's my understanding. We didn't talk about that in any kind of detail. She did not express any.
So this is going to come up on cross-examination because the state is claiming that she did this because she wanted to just be with Z, her, and Hannah. Like that is what the state is claiming. And the fact that this expert did not dive into the dynamic with the wives and how she felt about it, how some of that was going. And I don't know that this expert had the handwritten notes. I don't think that she reviewed, and I'm not saying this to be critical. I'm just saying that on cross-examination, that part is gonna come up because the state believes that was a significant part of why she did what she did. And this doctor did not assess for that.
Dissatisfaction with their presence. She talked about them being there, but she didn't say anything positive or negative about it.
Okay. And at some point in time, they had a child. Mr. Benmichael and Ms. Driver had a child together.
That's right.
Hannah in the context of this case, right? Was Ms. Driver ever able to explain to you any difference in their relationship once the child became involved?
I think she started to become more concerned about having a normal life for her child once she had a child. She was concerned that there was no prenatal health care, that there was no birth certificate, there was no social security, that there were no vaccines. And she described to me sort of feeling like she was concerned that her baby wouldn't get a normal life.
Okay. Stability is something that she was looking at?
It seemed that way.
Okay. You were aware that their living arrangement, they didn't maintain a set home.
She described them as nomadic.
Yes. Going back to the medication issue with Ms. Driver, your records that you reviewed while she was at the jail, you said that they tried her on different medications at various times. Is that common when trying to treat someone with mental health illnesses?
To a certain degree, there was more fluctuation in hers than I would normally expect to see. Whenever you give somebody a medication, you don't know, everybody responds to medications differently. So they start at a low level and they increase. And if there are side effects, they may try a different medication. Then they have to start over again at a low level and increase up to a therapeutic level. Symptoms may change. They may have to address different things as things go along. They may have to add a new medication in to address any kind of side effects. So there's always some adjustment. In Ms. Driver's case, there was more because she did not believe in taking medications and did not want to take medications. So she would get better. And as soon as she was better, she would say, well, I don't want medications. I don't need medications. And they would try to explain to her, the reason you're feeling better now is because you're on medication. But she didn't want to take them. So she was taking them sporadically and consistently. And they would lower the dosage to make it less impactful on her mental state. And then they would have to change it again because her symptoms would flare out. There would be a change in her symptoms after that.
Is that common generally for people that have mental health illnesses, have issues with them taking medication?
Yes.
Is it common for people with mental health issues to basically believe that they're okay? They don't recognize their own issues?
That's actually a symptom of schizophrenia. Yeah.
Right. And I guess more particularly so in the case for Ms. Driver, who had a lifestyle leading up to this circumstance of not wanting to take pharmaceutical medication at all, right?
That's my understanding.
And further than that, someone that is not taking medication consistently and refusing to cooperate with that treatment plan, that can further, I guess, delay the ability to get treatment for those particular illnesses. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And did you see that in Ms. Driver in this case?
There was some indication of that because whenever she would reduce her medications or go off her medications, her symptoms would become more evident. And she was on suicide watch several times for long periods of time. She had to be restrained because of self-harm behaviors. She put strapped into a chair. They have a restraint chair that they can kind of roll around, and they had to put her in one of those because she was hurting herself.
Okay. What ultimately did you diagnose Ms. Driver with in this case?
Schizoaffective disorder, borderline personality disorder, and the cannabis use.
And we talked a little bit about that. So,
And I do not believe that she was on cannabis at the time. I understand why this expert thought that she was, and but it does not sound like there was any in her system at all. And but I do think that she was definitely having manic episodes. In everything that I heard, it does sound like there were definitely some that she does meet criteria for borderline personality disorder. And I think they're trying to lean into the psychosis and the delusion to be why she did what she did, when a lot of people are feeling like it was an attempt to punish Z. And that it was an attempt to kind of, now it was serious, okay? So like it was very, very problematic. And I agree, a young Black economist, that the word to describe what she experienced, like a very common one, would be grooming, especially how old she was. And I think she was susceptible to this type of individual. And it's sad. And it does sound like he might call himself a prophet. I know that Jason got really defensive, in my opinion, when that was brought up. But often individuals that have this cult-like mentality, they often have narcissistic type features. They are normally within these types of groups, there are often this patriarchy where the men are in control, the women have to be completely submissive and don't really have a say. Or if you want to say, leave, but the children often have to stay. They're going to kind of bring up black magic, I think. So like we're going to see what happens with some of that. But
let's focus more directly on the schizoaffective disorder. What is that? Can you describe that for the jury, please?
Schizoaffective disorder is, a lot of people know about schizophrenia. So it's schizophrenia plus mood. Schizophrenia is when somebody has thoughts that are different than other people. Or perceptions that are different from other people. So they may see things that aren't really there, or they may hear things that when there's nothing to hear. They may smell things that aren't there. They may feel things walking on their skin or feel things in their body. So those are hallucinations. They may have delusions, which are fixed false beliefs that persist even in the face of contrary evidence. And that's usually not just, these conspiracy theories are bound these days, right? Everybody's got a theory about things. Those you can see how they develop. You can see what they're based on. When you're talking about a delusion, it's something more than that. It's when there's really no other explanation for their belief other than that they have a mental illness. So a lot of times it takes people are out to get me, people out to harm me, or I have special powers. I can fly, I can see things, I'm smarter than everybody else. I spoke to one gentleman who was positive that he was the president of Mars. So that's the kind of thing that you're looking at with schizophrenia. Plus you also get disorganized thinking. So they may change subjects without any indication of why. They may start out talking about the sky is blue, and then when the sky is blue, the leaves are green, and then the leaves die, and you end up talking about death. There's like these very loose associations between what they talk about, or they kind of flow off onto some different track, and it's hard to get them back. So that's sort of the disorganized thinking portion of schizophrenia. So when it's schizoaffective disorder, you've got the hallucinations, delusions, and thought disorder, plus problems with your mood, depression, mania, and sometimes both. Sometimes they go back and forth. Sometimes it's just one or the other.
And what about the borderline personality disorder? How does that play in?
Borderline personality disorder is sort of a lifetime thing. It's characterological. Oftentimes it's triggered by some sort of trauma or some sort of feeling of abandonment in early childhood, but it's a pattern of behavior that starts in adolescence and continues throughout their life, whether in school, at work, at home. It's a consistent part of who they are. And it involves things like unstable relationships. So like Ms. Driver talked about having sort of a push and pull with her parents. She'd go back to her parents, she'd leave her parents, she'd go back to her parents, leave her parents. That is sort of indicative of an unstable relationship. It's also an unstable sense of self. So you might one minute think, oh no, I'm a good person. I'm a great person. I do good things. And the next minute you might think, I am horrible. I'm a terrible person. And they hold all of this sort of at the same time. So it's very, they call it a dialectic, where you try and hold these things. And that's sort of a big word. And I don't even know why I used it, but you try and hold all.
And so typically the treatment for borderline personality disorder would be dialectical behavior therapy to help them be able to balance those two opposing things. That two things can be true at the same time. Often individuals with this diagnosis struggle with that. And that's why dialectical behavior therapy is very effective at teaching skills of how to manage emotions, how to be less reactive, how to, when I initially think or feel something that that might be a misperception, and I might have to question it. I might have to look for more evidence. I might have to ask questions before reacting. And so, yeah.
All of this stuff inside, and it leads to aggravation, anger, impulsivity. And one of sort of the characteristics is sort of this need to hold on tightly to people in your life. They call it frantic efforts to avoid abandonment.
So is it the therapist's job to determine if it's a cult or not a cult? So I think everybody agrees that this was definitely a cult. This evaluator, this forensic psychologist, is believing that her delusions went beyond what the group believed. That's what this evaluator is claiming.
And that's something that was even noted in the jail records when other people in jail were, when Ms. Driver started experiencing people in jail was sort of rejecting her or being critical of her, she would get suicidal and self-harming. That's that kind of thing we're looking at, where people will do whatever they can to keep people from leaving them. And so all that sort of comes together to make a very unstable interaction, both with themselves and with the world.
Now, in this particular case, were you aware that Ms. Driver had continued to have contact with Mr. Benyamin while she was in custody?
I had heard that occurred. Yes.
Is that something that would be a consistent symptom of someone that has borderline personality disorder, as you just described it?
Yes, in my opinion, it is.
Okay. Would that be more particularly heightened in a situation like this, where she viewed him as the leader of this group, this cult type of religious foundational group?
That plus just sort of the general stress that was in her life, all of those can increase that kind of thing.
Okay. Now, these diagnoses that you made, they are based on actual psychological findings through medical journals. Is that accurate?
There's a criteria that has been set out in the Diagnostic Statistic Manual that lays out all of the well-researched and defined different kinds of disorders and what their specific criteria is to meet those.
And what are we up to now in the DSM-5?
The DSM-5 TR, the text revision.
Okay.
So it's right after 5.
All right. And those, I presume as a clinician or even as a forensic psychologist, you interview someone, you make notes of everything you see, and you go back to the DSM guidelines just to review and make sure, all right, do I think this person meets this particular diagnosis? Is that fair? Yeah,
there's sort of an interplay. You go and we study the book, right? So we know generally what we can we'll get triggered when somebody says something or does something. We'll go, okay, that reminds me of X. So then you would ask them more questions because you want to see if it meets. And then you take everything back and you pull up the diagnostic criteria and you walk through, does she meet? Because there's like a whole list of criteria, and they have to meet some of them, but not all of them, because nobody is the same. Everybody is different. And so you look at all of them and you see, where do we have signs that she meets that criteria, and where is that supported by other sources as well?
Now, you have talked a little bit throughout your testimony about confirming that someone isn't making it up.
Yes.
I think in the medical parlance, they call it malingering.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. Malingering is one. That's an intentional fabrication of symptoms or an intentional exaggeration of symptoms, specifically for the purpose of secondary gain. But we also have to be aware that not everybody's, secondary gain is hard to prove and hard to demonstrate. So you're also looking for are they exaggerating for whatever reason, because it's their personality to exaggerate? Are they exaggerating everything? So just because somebody is malingering or feigning or exaggerating one thing doesn't mean they don't have a mental illness. Doesn't mean they aren't being honest about other things. So you really have to parse all of that out. And you took steps in your evaluation to determine if you believe that she was either faking it or malingering or anything that would. I didn't do any testing, but I did pay attention to that. That was something that I seriously considered. Does that go back?
So we started this video with talking about, because we actually listened to a portion of the detective facilitating a conversation between Z and Chloe. And I think they were also investigating because Chloe had a black eye. Everybody's minimizing, like, something happened to her. And in my opinion, I think Jason minimized stuff that Z might have done, the impacts Z might have had, it does sound like she tried to escape around like that was around like the November 26th or so, like that November timeframe. She had attempts when she tried to leave, and that's when he found her phone. He saw that her parents were going to come and get her, and he ran off with their child. And so I think he would have let her go, but she was not leaving because he was not about, in my opinion, he wasn't about to lose a second child. So Z's first wife left in the middle of the night from Jerry's house, same house in Georgia. I don't know why. For some reason, Jerry's house is a great place to escape. I don't know. But so the first wife escaped from Jerry's house. And so, uh, um, uh, and I don't know that they can charge him with anything if she didn't say he did this to me. Like I don't because I don't know that he was ever charged with the assault. I don't think he was ever charged with anything. And people, it's not illegal to join a cult. It's not. Now, if there is physical harm or SA or different things like that, that can definitely be an issue. The prosecution is going to bring up the communication that she had with Z right before she met with this evaluator. Okay. So right before Chloe met with this evaluator, Chloe talked with Z. And I believe the prosecution is going to bring that up. All right. Let's keep it going.
Back to the idea of her consistency with the statements she was giving you in both of your interviews you conducted.
Yes.
Is it also fair to say that you were able to evaluate that based on not only what she told you, but what she had told Dr. Ballard in the reports that she conducted?
I didn't look too carefully at what she told Dr. Ballard, so I couldn't testify about what.
Okay. So Dr. Mallard is another expert that might be I don't know if that's going to be the next witness that's called, because there's another expert that did a private evaluation, I believe. So I believe Chloe has had 3 or 4 psychological evaluations, like that's assessments of her mental health at that time. And I don't know if that other doctor did any testing. I hope they did. I love talking about testing, but we'll see.
But she told Dr. Ballard but generally speaking, my recollection was that it was very consistent,
Okay.
and it was consistent with what was in the reports from the jail.
All right. So you had jail records that were indicating those same ideas and some.
So they have phone calls. They know. So Vanessa Lilly, why do I think Chloe is still talking to Z? Because they have the records. She talked with him, I think, because they have the booking area. She was using other people's number, like other inmates' numbers, to reach out to him because they blocked it on her number. He had to try multiple numbers because he can't call her. So if somebody's incarcerated, they can't receive calls, they can only make calls. And so she's initiating contact with him. And the state is going to bring that part up. So, yeah.
Symptoms, correct?
Correct.
You had at least a report from Dr. Ballard, which drew similar conclusions that you looked at and reviewed, right?
Yes.
And you obviously had your own evaluations that you conducted of her over 2 different periods of time.
Yes.
And you spent about 4 hours and 15 minutes by my calculation with her over the course of 2 times. Is that
About
fair?
that, yeah.
Do you believe that that's a fair time frame to spend with someone when conducting forensic evaluations such as this?
It's more than we usually do.
Okay. Can you explain, you talked about it a little bit, can you explain the delusional compulsions and what delusions are specifically?
So I talked about delusions a little bit already, but they are a fixed false belief that it's held even if you have evidence to the contrary, and is so unusual that it couldn't be justified. It couldn't be explained by any other reason other than there's something wrong with the way the person's thinking. A delusional compulsion is when a person, if their delusion had been real, then it would have justified their conduct.
Can you give us an example of a delusion generally that you see frequently in your line of work?
There's so many. A lot of them have to do with, I saw a gentleman who believed that his family members had been replaced with imposters, that they looked like his family members and they talked like his family members, but he actually believed that they were aliens inside there, like pod people, I guess. He believed that they had taken over his parents' appearance and bodies to harm him.
And what specifically in Ms. Driver's case can you point to as some examples of delusions that she was dealing with?
So she talked generally about paranoia, that everybody was ganging up against her. Everybody is talking about her. Everybody is out to get her in some way. She talked about on sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, sort of a grandiose delusion that she had special powers and special skills. And that started back when she was a teen with believing that she could read minds and that people could read her mind and things like that. It continued with this sort of magical thinking that things that she did could impact the world. So if she, walk the right way, talk the right way, breathe the right way, then it would be good for the world. If she walked the wrong way, breathe the wrong way, talk the wrong way, then it could be bad for the world. And that is sort of she also talked about delusions of reference, which I also talked about before, thinking that thinking that somebody's facial expression, that they were giving them a specific message and not like a, I don't like you message, like, because people glare at you. We all do that, right? But she's talking more about somebody would talk about death in a completely different context. And she interpreted that as they're telling me specifically that I have to kill myself. That kind of thing. She would see a knife just lying out in somebody's kitchen where it's supposed to be. And she would see that and she would interpret that as that's a sign that I need to kill myself with my baby, cut somebody, cut my throat. So she had a lot of that was going back at least a month or two before this actually happened.
And you were able to observe or identify those delusions based on what Ms. Driver was telling you, number one, right?
Yeah.
And also you were seeing that from some collateral sources in this case based on statements made in the investigative summary from the police department.
That's correct. And she said it to the jail.
Yes. So for example, if she was, like an example of a delusion to her could be, and a fellow inmate at the jail saying that her grandmother died, she could interpret it as a statement to her that she needed to kill herself.
She could. That's not one of the ones she specifically mentioned. She mentioned being at a 12 tribes event where they were talking or preaching about being accepting of death. And she interpreted that as the sign that it was time.
So trigger warning for self thoughts. That's what we're about to get into.
And are you aware that she went to a 12 tribes event the morning of?
Yeah, that's the one she was speaking
about. Yeah, she was specifically telling you about that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now you describe what delusions are and what delusional compulsion are. Did you believe that Ms. Driver was suffering from delusional compulsions during this time frame?
I believe she was experiencing delusions.
Okay. You were aware that she was reporting issues and evidence of domestic violence, is that right?
Yes.
You were aware there was an incident about 10 days before the December 8th incident of report with law enforcement in North Carolina where she had a black eye? Were you aware of that?
I was aware that she had a black eye when she went to see her mother.
Yes. You saw that source in the information that you were provided that her mom reported the black eye to law enforcement.
I believe so. I don't have a specific memory, but that's.
Okay. Are you aware that there was a time frame? Did Ms. Driver tell you about a time frame with which Mr. Benyamin, or Mr. Michael rather, took their child from her and had her away from her for a period of time?
She did.
Okay. Did she talk about how that affected her mental state? Did that add things to your evaluation with her?
She talked about that in terms of why she went back to him. That she had called her parents, texted with her parents, and asked them to come pick her and Hannah up, but that she used it from a phone that's monitored by Mr. Benyamin, and that he discovered those messages and came and took Hannah away from her before she could go. And that her parents did come get her, but only got her, and that he was telling her that she would never see her daughter again if she didn't come back, so she returned back.
Okay. She talked to you about the nature of how she felt about her child, right?
A little bit, but not that much.
Did she tell you things about how she felt like she was downloading herself with Hannah when she breastfed?
She did. She talked about that she believed that she was downloading her sins or the bad parts about her into her child through breastfeeding. She also talked about pouring her sin into the child. And I believe there was a statement report from Mr. Benyamin to the police that was described in the investigative report that she called Hannah, that Hannah was no longer her child, but was a sin. And so there was a lot of evidence that she really believed that by having a child with somebody who was married, by having a child in this sort of open relationship, that it was a sin, and that she passed that sin on to her daughter. And so they shared.
So this is a great question from Donna. So I think she'd probably get better mental health treatment in a mental health facility, but individuals do still have access to some treatments. It's definitely not the same. So I don't want to minimize that it's the same. I also don't believe that she expected to survive. I think that was a serious action and a serious thing. I don't think that she expected to survive. All right. And then I also just want to answer this one. A lot of people get confused. Not guilty by reason of insanity does not mean that she goes free. The court is still the one that will determine, based on the doctors at the facility. They would be the ones to determine if she was ever able to come out. Right.
That they were both embodiments of sin.
Okay. And you specifically indicate in your report that she believed that she needed to take her own life because of those delusions. Is that fair to say?
That was my impression, yes.
Okay.
That and everything in the world was telling her to.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just about the belief about sin. It was those delusions of reference that she was experiencing both before, during, and after. Everything was telling her that she needed to do this in her mind.
Okay. Just have one.
Fast forward.
Experiencing. Do you believe that they go beyond what Mr. Joyce was trying to teach her with respect to their belief system?
I do. I mean, there were certainly things that she talked about that aligned with the things that he taught her. But there are several reasons why I don't think that the ones that were really leading up to this were actually part of that religious belief, mostly because she started questioning those religious beliefs. And then she started getting a lot of distress about it. And while the beliefs, the magical thinking parts that she could impact the world, that may have been something that she learned from Mr. Benyamin, but the delusions of reference, those are different. Those are something else that, as far as what I've seen and what I've been told so far, is not a part of their religious beliefs. That everything's telling you need to die is not part of it, as far as I've seen. And the other reason I don't believe that it's entirely just what she's been taught is that she was having delusions before she ever even met him. And so you take somebody who's vulnerable, who's young, who's already delusional, who's already using drugs, and you bring them in and you start teaching them this stuff. A sane, stable person might start to believe it, maybe. But a person who has a personality disorder and a delusional disorder and a substance use disorder, you're teaching them something that increases those problems as opposed to decreasing those problems. So if she started out, that's sort of her baseline. And she started out as vulnerable and delusional and was only made worse by this. So while it may be consistent, that doesn't mean that's all it is.
Without her receiving.
All right. So I want to skip ahead to cross-examination. All right. I have the full link to this. Oh, good. Because I think there was only a little bit left. There was only a little bit left before I skipped out. Sorry. I think he was almost done. We're going to skip ahead to cross-examination. Let's go.
Hannah and stabbed her in the neck again.
She did not.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, we got it. She started in hot. Okay. So the marker for when this started was not accurate. Okay. Court TV. It's okay. Thank you, Court TV, for making this available. I appreciate it.
Examination.
Dr. Deere.
Okay. So I think this part's going to go fast. So I'm going to slow this down to 1.25 and we'll see how this goes. So this is cross-examination by the
What
prosecution.
percentage of the population has a mental health disorder?
Oh, I don't know. Do not know the answer to that question.
Okay. Is some type of mental health diagnosis pervasive in our society?
Yeah, because the diagnoses range from very mild to extreme. So yeah, we all have symptoms and things that bug us.
Okay.
That could fall into a category.
All right. And you'd agree that having a mental health diagnosis is not the same question as whether somebody's criminally responsible, correct?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay. And somebody can have schizoaffective disorder and still be criminally responsible.
I can't let this one go by. Sarah, when they were in the chat, so Court TV was in the chat was that on Tuesday? I think that might've been on Tuesday. I nerded out so bad. I was like, oh my gosh, they're in the chat. And somebody came in and they were like, I left Court TV and I saw you were streaming and I came over here and I was like, shh, they're in the chat. It was Tuesday. It was so hilarious. Okay, so I would like to be a guest on Court TV or Law and Crime. I would. So on Tuesday, I am so honored. My head is exploding and I can't begin. So I am going to be a guest on Donnie Wahlberg's podcast, Very Scary People. That's like me. And I'm going to be interviewed by him on Tuesday. And so I think I'm going to do a members only stream after. and like just like nerd out after, just be like, oh my gosh, like so I want to vent afterwards. And so we're gonna do a members only stream on Tuesday after it. And then when the episode comes out, I will make sure to share it on the community tab. I might do a video where I like play I don't know, like I'll because I'm gonna be on like cloud nine. Like it's super cool. Somebody reached out and they were like, "Hey, I'm a producer for this show. Like, I'd love to would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so we did some meetings. It was all super, it was all super, super awesome. We are about to get to the cross-examination. They're going to do that chart. And if y'all have questions about the chart, let me know. I when I disagree with their experts, because sometimes their experts, I don't agree. Or sometimes they're like legal experts will start talking about mental health diagnoses. Like, oh, I think the person might have autism. And I'm like, why? Like sometimes they make statements and I get mad in the comments and I say my thoughts. And so it's a whole thing. But let's keep it going.
They can.
And somebody can have borderline personality disorder and still be criminally responsible.
They can.
And somebody can have cannabis use disorder and still be held criminally responsible.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you specifically. I'll go back sort of to the beginning. You talked about how one of the things you diagnosed her with was cannabis use disorder. And in your report, isn't it true that you indicated that Ms. Driver told you that she believed that CBD had high levels of THC in it?
Yes, she told me that.
Okay. And when you were testifying about the reasons for your diagnosing her with cannabis use disorder, you talked about the intoxicating effects of THC.
Okay, so I want to get to this part because Donna, you were under the impression that Chloe was the first wife, not Juliana. Well, so Jason was the one that brought up this fourth wife. Jason, because on direct examination from the state, Jason, because the state was asked about the 3 wives and he mentions 4 wives. So then the defense on cross-examination, they're like, hey, let's talk about this 4th wife. And the defense had been floating Juliana's name out, like they had been floating this 4th person, their name out there for a while. And this individual does have a child with, and they were able to flee. And like it was so Chloe was not, and also because Jessica was in a relationship with him before, because Jessica was in a relationship with him, Jessica left, he starts a relationship with Chloe, and then Jessica came back and was wife number 2. I think the name was Jessica. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. But yeah, we're about to get into the CBD and THC right now.
Correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so in making that diagnosis, are you assuming that there was THC in that substance?
Yes.
Okay. And so if you learned that when she went to the hospital on December the 8th, she was tested and she tested negative for THC and the substance was tested and only tested positive for CBD, would that change your diagnosis?
Yes.
Okay.
It would change that one diagnosis, not the others.
Okay. And you also put in your report that Ms. Driver represented to you that her use of CBD was involuntary, correct?
That she said that she wanted to use CBD oil that she purchased online, but she wasn't allowed to. So she was given the CBD oil that was brought in by a friend. She didn't know its source, but that after a while it was not helping her and she felt like she felt worse, but she was then required to keep taking it.
Okay. Are you aware that Ms. Driver was evaluated by 3 different doctors in this case? Dr. Ballard first, then you, then a Dr. Zom?
I heard about the 3rd evaluator recently, but I've never seen a report or any information about that.
Okay. Were you aware that she told Dr. Zom when asked about the CBD that it was still in her bag, but she doesn't even remember if she was still taking it?
I'm not objecting. She just said she doesn't know anything about Dr. Zahn before.
I was never given a report. I've never been told what was in the report.
Sustain the objection.
All right.
Question too, since you read the report and do everything.
I'll rephrase my question.
All right, I'll strike that question and you can.
I'll
move on.
rephrase it. If she told Dr. Zom that the CBD was still in her bag, but she doesn't even remember if she was still using it, would that be inconsistent with what she told you?
It would be inconsistent to the extent of whether she remembers it or not. That doesn't necessarily mean she didn't take it.
Okay. Now you indicated that, I think your language was that you became aware of the fact that she was still communicating with Benyamin Ben Michael after your evaluation. Is that right?
I heard something about her accessing text messages or some sort of communication device from within the jail.
Okay. But you spent over 4 hours with her on August the 11th of 2022 and September the 2nd of 2022.
Yes,
And she told you all kinds of things about her relationship with Benyamin Ben Michael and how abusive and oppressive it was, right?
she gave me a lot of information.
Did she ever tell you in your 4 hours together that she was still actively communicating with him on hundreds of jail phone calls?
She did not.
And as part of your forensic evaluation,
'Cause I think at one point, was it 30 times in one day? Like, I think it was like, it might not have been 30 times, but like there had been, y'all correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, if it was 30 times in one day. I remember something about 30 times.
evaluation process, is it typical for the evaluators to tell the defendant what the possible options and outcomes are for each? For example, would you explain to her the concept of not guilty by reason of insanity and what would have to be found in order for her to avail herself of that defense?
Yes,
Okay, and that's typical, right? To
it is.
explain that to them?
It is.
Okay, so she would have known from the jump what would have to be proven for her to establish that defense.
Not from the jump.
Okay,
That's not the first thing to tell them. I went through the entirety of her background. I already had gathered all of her mental health symptoms before we even talked about any plea options. So she had already given me her background information, what she had experienced during childhood, what she experienced in terms of her drug use history, what she had experienced with the cult, what she called the cult. And it wasn't until competency evaluation when we talked that when we went through all the different plea options and what their meaning and consequences are, that was the first time I gave her any information about what the not guilty by reason.
And so it's common in a competency evaluation, or even like if you're doing therapy with somebody to restore competency, you're going to talk about, do you understand what guilty means? Do you understand what not guilty? Do you understand what pleading, the consequences of pleading not guilty by reason of insanity? It is normal during a competency evaluation to go over all of those things.
Insanity plea means.
and when it comes to people in your type of position that do these types of evaluations, is it common to explain what not guilty by reason of insanity means?
Yes, we've got to make sure that the part of the competency evaluation is to make sure they understand what the different options are and what their potential consequences are.
Okay,
So yes, we go through each one of the pleas.
all right. And she had already met and been evaluated by another doctor, Dr. Ballard, prior to you seeing her, right?
I believe so.
Okay, and do you know what Dr. Ballard discussed with her about what had to be established for the,
So, because a lot of people are saying they would love for there to be a no contact between Chloe and Z. And Chloe would have to want that. Now, if she was found not guilty by reason of insanity, the state hospital could write an order limiting communication with Z. They don't record phone calls and those things, and so there could be ways to get around that. But because normally in a facility, you don't want to limit people's phone access unless it's required. But she's an adult, and if she wants to continue to have communication with him, even if it's wrong for her, even if we're all like, oh my gosh, like this guy is not good for you, if she chooses to do that. Oy. And now her treatment team would have recommendations, her treatment team, all of those things. But I just because somebody even said, if would they enter an order that she couldn't have communication with him. And the victim in this has been identified as Hannah. And it's really common in DV and in unsafe relationships for people to not come forward and to go back, and for there to be this cycle, for there to be this coercive control. Individuals with borderline personality disorder, one of their biggest fears is being rejected, abandoned, and her even knowing that I think one wife just had a baby, another wife is pregnant. She might feel like they're all moving on without her. That can have an impact. But I don't think there's a way for them to legally limit it. And the jail tried for the sake of the case. I think the jail tried to limit communication, but they just kept getting new phone numbers. It's similar if you've listened to Wade Wilson's phone calls. They would block the phone numbers of some of the Wade wives, and then they would find other ways to reach out, and they would give him a new number. They would say, "Ooh, I have this Google number now." Like they would find ways to get around whatever things the jail put in place. So let's keep it going.
insanity defense?
I do not know what her proceedings are. I don't know when or where or how she might have covered that topic. I'm sure she would have covered that topic, but I don't know if it was the first thing or the last thing.
And you indicated in your report that when you met with her, let me get your language here. You found her to be able to maintain a reality-based conversation, and the statements that she made during the interview were logical, coherent, and relevant.
At the time of the evaluation.
So when you met with her, she was stable on her medication, and you didn't have any concerns about her being
The first time she was mildly hypomanic, but yes, she was generally stable. The second time she was depressive, but she was not actively hallucinating.
Okay. And you indicated that she relayed to you that the relationship and the status of the sort of polygamist lifestyle was positive?
I didn't ask her about that.
Okay.
She relayed to me that she joined the group, that other people joined, and that at the end she was questioning things, but we didn't talk in any depth about how she felt about the relationship in the early years, the sort of the honeymoon years. We didn't talk about that.
All right. Well, did you talk about how she felt about those relationships in the later stages?
She didn't talk about the sister wives at all. I don't know why I used sister wives, because that show, I guess.
Okay.
But the other wives, she talked about them existing, but she didn't say good or bad things about them.
So when she met with you, she expressed complete indifference about all the other people in the group and her lifestyle.
Yeah, she just described it. She didn't say whether she had thoughts or feelings about it.
Okay. And are you aware that she told Dr. Ballard, who evaluated her, that she initially didn't mind having multiple women and that it made sense to her, but the reality of it was very toxic and stressful and very hard for all of them to get along?
I don't have a specific memory about that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. And are you aware that she reported to Dr. Ballard that there were frequent arguments, sharing an RV with Mr. Joyce and the other wife, and then a third woman joined, which added to the conflict?
I don't have any recollection.
Okay.
of that.
That would be inconsistent with what she told you?
Not particularly, because I didn't ask her.
Okay. So you did not inquire about sort of the dynamics of the group on December the 8th of 2020?
So some people do not like this prosecutor. I like the defense lawyers, especially the guy. I don't know, like the guy, he has a sense of humor. Because even with this expert, I think he even mentioned like we got into, I don't know, like he makes some funny little comments and stuff. I think she's doing a good job attacking the credibility of this testimony, because it's like if you didn't get into the dynamics of the group, then you might be missing a big part of this case. And I understand why this expert didn't. And I'm not being like, once again, I'm not being critical of this expert, but having seen the evidence and looking at this as if I were on the jury, it would be important that she didn't get into the group dynamics and how she felt about the other wives and all of that. That would have been important to me.
I talked about what she was experiencing and feeling. I didn't ask her about other people.
Okay. So you didn't get information about Jason Spillers or Jessica?
I knew they were there.
But in terms of her thoughts about that relationship and how that related to her decisions to commit the act, you didn't get into that at all?
Those were not the basis for what she told me was why she behaved the way she behaved.
Okay. But one of the things that you were capable of reviewing in this case and had was her handwritten notes from December the 9th of 2020, the day after she killed Hannah, right?
I did have those.
Okay.
Or at least I had some. I don't know if I had the totality.
All right. So in terms of her very first statements about why she killed Hannah, are you aware?
I'm just going to say what I'm thinking. Sometimes in the South, there's this thing called nice nasty, where it's like, so something you had available to you and you could have reviewed is this, right? And I'm not saying, but like that's how that came off to me personally. See, I keep going.
Aware that she said, I was going insane and no longer wanted to be with his friends, but kept coming back for him?
I don't have a specific memory of that, but I may have had that information.
Okay. Are you aware that in her first statements about why she killed Hannah, she said, I only wanted my baby and husband, but he refused?
I don't remember that.
Okay. You'd agree that her own statements the day after she killed Hannah about what motivated her act would be highly relevant to her state of mind the day before?
It would be relevant, not necessarily dispositive, since she was medicated and in trauma,
Okay.
but it would certainly be relevant.
All right. So your evaluation of her was taking place in 2022, and these statements she was making to law enforcement was the day after. Can we agree on
So
that?
it would definitely improve her memory.
Okay.
So, for the record, you made those statements at the hospital, not too long.
I'm sorry. She made them to law enforcement at the hospital. And did you, in reviewing and reaching your conclusions about this case, review all of these handwritten notes that she
I
provided?
reviewed the ones that I had.
Okay. Can I approach and show you and see if you recognize?
Sure. all this room.
Okay. And in your report, you indicate that one of the things you received were the Kennestone Hospital handwritten notes of Chloe Driver, correct?
Yeah, they actually said Kennestone Hospital on the top, and that one didn't. So I'm not sure if I can look at my notes. I might have a copy of the ones that I actually
Okay.
viewed. If that's okay.
Are you? I can approach. Is this what you're referring to?
I think the other records that Mr. Driver.
Those are the ones that I had.
It's not that, it's not hospital.
These are the ones that you
Those
have?
are the ones that I have.
All right. So you would have known in your evaluation of her that Ms. Driver told the psychiatrist at Kennestone Hospital, I was stating for months I couldn't handle my husband's lifestyle anymore.
I would have had it. I don't specifically remember everything that she wrote. There's a lot of information.
Okay.
Case, I'm afraid.
And you would have known that she wrote to the psychiatrist for the first 2 years, not so much because it was just us traveling. But then once he got people listening to him more, I started feeling scared and was begging for attention for us to be with the baby.
I don't remember that one either.
Okay. So these statements about her begging for attention, her not liking his lifestyle, these statements that she made close in time to the crime, you did not factor those into your determination about what her.
There were certain ones that I remember reviewing, saying that she felt, can I reply? I can't remember whether you, I don't think I got an answer on whether I could review the notes that I had. To
Sure, of course. You can't read them, but you can refresh your recollection of them.
Let me just see if I have them here.
You can read it, you can't read it.
Can't read them aloud.
And the state is trying to discredit her, and she's doing a good job just basing it on what she has and what she reviewed. And
Did review that.
You did review what?
The document you just read.
And are you aware that she made statements that to law enforcement the day after she killed Hannah that stated, I just wanted to have a normal life with Nimsy?
I don't have a specific recollection. It wouldn't surprise me though.
Okay. And would statements about wanting to have a normal life with her baby, wanting to be with just her husband and her baby, and wanting to be away from the cult, would those things be delusional?
No.
Okay. Those would be rational, right?
I believe so, but they could be influenced by her mental health condition, but yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about Ms. Driver's statements in evaluations and in the investigation of this case that are relevant to her ability to distinguish between right and wrong. Are you aware that one of her first inquiries while in the hospital was, how long will my prison sentence be for killing her?
I have heard that.
Okay. And from a psychological standpoint, let me rephrase my question.
so this is peach mango from Aldi. Okay, has a little bit of caffeine in it. Y'all don't be over here. I don't. No, I don't. I do not. No, it is not yellow. But I'm about to do a little grape electrolytes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Y'all are hilarious. All right, let's keep it going.
Is that consistent with her statement to you about her ability to distinguish between right and wrong?
It certainly reflects an ability to distinguish between what's legal and not legal.
Okay.
There's a little bit more gray area when you talk about right and wrong on a more ethical, moral appropriateness level.
Okay, but we're talking about the law. So would you agree with me that she has expressly made statements that she understood what she was doing to Hannah was wrong?
She did state to me that she knew that it was wrong, but she also stated, I was at peace because it's how it's supposed to be. So this, again, both sides of that coin. Yes, she appeared to understand the legal wrongfulness, but there is some question about the moral and appropriateness.
Wait a minute, I need to go back on that one because this is really important to the law of did she understand the wrongfulness of her actions. So I need to go back to listen to this.
Her ability to distinguish between right and wrong.
It certainly reflects an ability to distinguish between what's legal and not legal. There's a little bit more gray area when you talk about right and wrong on a more ethical, moral appropriateness level.
Okay, but we're talking about the law. So would you agree with me that she has expressly made statements that she understood what she was doing to Hannah was wrong?
She did state to me that she knew that it was wrong, but she also stated, I was at peace because it's how it's supposed to be.
Okay.
So this, again, both sides of that coin. Yes, she appeared to understand the legal wrongfulness, but there is some question about the moral and appropriateness in her
Okay.
mind.
And you said you had Dr. Ballard's report when you did your evaluation. Are you aware that she told Dr. Ballard, as soon as it happened, I regretted it. I thought I shouldn't have done this. This was not supposed to happen.
Whoa. Okay. So she's giving different people different statements. Okay. And they're going to get into some details. Okay. So there's going to be some triggering details about the event that's coming up within the next maybe 5 to 10 minutes, maybe sooner.
I said before, I didn't read her report all that carefully. I did review her report, but I don't remember the specific things that she said. But a statement like that after the fact also would not surprise me.
Okay. So you'd agree that the best historian of whether she understood the difference between right and wrong would be her, correct?
Maybe.
Okay. And when she was expressly asked if she thought her behavior was wrong, she said yes.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. And in being evaluated by Dr. Ballard, are you aware that when she was discussing whether she knew her actions were wrong, she also volunteered that she locked the door so that she could also stab herself in the throat and make sure that she died?
Yes, I'm aware that she locked the door to try and kill both herself and her daughter.
And are you aware that those were statements made by Ms. Driver in response to whether she understood what she was doing was wrong?
Yes. Based on her report.
Right. Well, and you're relying heavily on her report for your testimony about her
And
delusions.
based on
right?
the other psychologist report.
Understood, not Ms. Driver's report?
Yes, I did rely a lot on Ms. Driver's report.
Okay. And with regard to your inquiry with her about whether she understood what she was doing to her daughter was wrong, isn't it true that she told you that she apologized to her daughter before she repeatedly stabbed her in the neck?
She did say that she apologized.
And
So normally, if somebody is disconnected from reality and they're delusional and they think they're saving they normally aren't going to apologize. And like based on our legal, so we have this is a hard bar to reach. Okay. Not guilty by reason of insanity is really, really, that's a hard one to reach. I do believe because lawyer Lee, so I tagged lawyer Lee's video down in the description. I believe Georgia is a state that has guilty but mentally ill. Yes. Georgia. So I would probably find her guilty but mentally ill. That's what, based on what we've heard so far, that would probably be my thing, because she could get mental health treatment for a period of time and then she could serve a sentence after that. I would probably find her guilty but mentally ill, similar to the Deobra Redden case out of Las Vegas. The man that attacked the judge, he also had schizoaffective disorder. I'm almost positive it was either schizophrenia or it was schizoaffective disorder, and he was psychotic in that, like, he was not connected to reality, but he clearly knew that his actions were wrong, and in the middle of trial he changed his plea to guilty but mentally ill because Nevada offers that. And so that's what I would, so just so as we're watching, just know that this might be an option for the jury. If I was on the jury, based on all of this, I would likely find her guilty but mentally ill. I do think that she was manic. I do think she has bipolar disorder. I do think that the influence of the group and the coercive control, I do think all of those things are an issue. And that's how I would probably personally do it. We will see what the jury does. All right, let's keep it going.
I want to talk to you about her statements to you surrounding the actual event. You'd agree with me that the pertinent question for purposes of criminal responsibility are state of mind at the time she committed the act.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So the testimony you just provided to the jury was from childhood to arrest, correct?
Yes, throughout the whole course of her life.
All right. So I want to talk about December the 8th when she's in the room with Hannah.
Okay.
What information did she provide to you about what she was doing in the room with Hannah just prior to her killing her?
She indicated that she had come from the 12 tribes meeting where she had believed that they were talking about death to give her a specific message that now was the time to do this thing that she'd been getting messages about, to kill herself and her daughter, and that they got to the location, and that when she went to go join the other two wives in one room, that Mr. Joyce like snapped at her and said, no, go to, she called it Brett's room. I believe Brett was somebody who previously lived there or previously traveled with him. So she told me that she interpreted that instruction as an instruction that she should kill herself and her daughter. She indicated that she was trying to do some research on her phone about how to get away, how to escape and move money and things like that. And that she went to try and change her daughter's diaper and didn't have a diaper and asked for one to be brought to her, and somebody threw her a dirty shirt instead, and that she interpreted that.
So this dirty shirt explanation did not come up on direct examination. I'm going to go back because this is going to be the thing that she says caused her to snap and to do the act, because she asked for a diaper and someone threw her a dirty shirt.
How to get away, how to escape and move money and things like that. And that she went to try and change her daughter's diaper and didn't have a diaper and asked for one to be brought to her, and somebody threw her a dirty shirt instead. And that she interpreted that giving her a dirty shirt instead of a diaper as a statement to her that she's not worthy of this world and she needs to leave this world. She's not even worth a clean shirt, and that therefore she should kill herself. And so that's when she said she did it.
Okay. And she told you, and you put in your report, that she was alone with Hannah in the room and she was doing research on her phone about bankruptcy and how to get away with her daughter.
Yes.
Okay. And you're aware that she had a phone with her in that room based on her statements to you and based on your review of the police report, right?
Right. She said she was doing research on her phone.
Okay. And you also put in your report that she didn't have any access to money. Is that right?
She had told me that part of the deal with joining this was that every woman who joined the group had to turn over all of their funds and put into a joint account to make it more spiritually strong. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but that everybody had to donate all of their money to this account, and that they were not allowed to use it without express permission or access it without express permission.
Okay. And are you aware that she had $1,000 cash in her bag with her phone and the baby's effects?
I did not know that.
Okay. Are you aware that she told Dr. Zom, who evaluated her, that when she left her parents' house, she put...
Again, we've already been down this road about what Dr. Zom report says. You never got it.
I'll rephrase it.
All right.
If she told somebody else that she put $1,000 cash in her bag before she went back with Benyamin, would that be inconsistent with her statement to you that she didn't have any access to money?
Not exactly. And let me explain, because I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah, yes.
But she had talked about in the time when she went to try and get her mother, trying to put together some money, trying to access some money, trying to move money towards her parents. So there was some indication already that she was trying to move money around, trying to save up, trying to do something that would help her escape with her daughter. So I didn't specifically ask her whether she had access on that day. So I couldn't say that it was inconsistent with her financial situation on the day.
But she represented to you that she didn't have any access to funds, right?
Overall, over the course of the relationship, that's what she said.
And you were not aware that she had $1,000 cash in her bag,
I was not.
debit cards in her name. Were you aware of that?
I did not know. I didn't.
Blank checks that related to an account that had $65,000 in it.
I have no information about that.
With regard to the actual event, we talked about her telling you that she knew it was wrong, and her statement to Dr. Ballard that she knew it was wrong and immediately regretted it. And we talked about her statements about locking the door to make sure she could accomplish the acts. I want to talk about the specific trigger that caused her to kill Hannah. Did she tell you that Benyamin throwing her the dirty shirt for Hannah was the last thing that triggered her, that nobody wanted her or Hannah to be here?
I believe that was the last trigger, yeah.
Okay, so she needs a clean shirt for the baby. She tells you he throws her a shirt up to the window. He's in the driveway and tosses her a shirt up to the window, and it's dirty.
That's my reflection.
Okay, and she indicated that was the trigger that told her nobody that wanted her or the baby to be there.
That on top of 3 months of seeing signs and symbols of those things, it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess.
Okay, but on the 8th, in terms of her state of mind, on the 8th, when she committed the act, that is what she relayed was her trigger for committing the act, correct?
It's what she relayed was the last thing that happened before she triggered the act. I mean, nobody can be parsed into one moment in time. Everybody's life builds upon itself. So if 3 months of seeing everything as being a sign that she's supposed to kill herself, the fact that it was a shirt that finally tipped it over, the last thing that happened doesn't mean that's the trigger. It's the last thing, the final thing.
Right. But if this jury is going to evaluate what her state of mind was at the time of the crime, you'd agree that her state of mind closest to the time of the crime was what was happening in that room with Hannah on that day.
Not really, because like I said, we're not just a moment in time. My sitting here in this chair, speaking to all of you and having butterflies in my stomach and, anxiety is not just because I'm sitting here right now. It's because I've sat here before. It's because I've sat there before. It's because I've experienced it before. And all those experiences lead up to how we interpret events. And unfortunately, in the driver's case, all of those experiences were, you shouldn't be here. You're bad. You're going to be punished. The world is going to end. And you and your daughter are sinful and you need to not be here anymore. And every single new thing is not a separate thing. It's an additional thing. It's adding a weight on top of a weight, on top of a weight, on top of a weight, until the bench finally crashes.
How much information did she give you about exactly how she killed Hannah? Was her memory intact? Did she have any problems giving you the play-by-play?
She basically said it was fuzzy. She remembered that she had done it. She remembered that she had harmed herself and harmed her baby. That was, I didn't get first I stabbed her and then I stabbed her there and then we didn't do that.
Did you ask her?
I asked her what happened and she told me what she could remember as far as I could tell, but I did not try and get a blow by blow because that's not necessarily relevant to my question.
Her memory of the event is not relevant to her mental state at the time she committed
She
the crime?
remembered it happened. Her memory of the specific identified details is not, it could have changed over time. I asked her to tell me as much as she could remember. She told me what she told me. It was relatively vague, but I did not get I moved my arm this way, I moved my arm that way, I moved that arm the other way.
Okay. Did she report to you that her memory was vague?
She just gave me a vague report. I don't remember what she said about the quality of her memory.
Okay. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what specifically vague means, because obviously her mental state during the commission of the crime, what she did, what she remembers, is relevant to whether she understood the difference between right and wrong and what motivated her actions. So let's break it down. Did she tell you that she went downstairs and grabbed a knife from the knife block in Gerald Adlin's kitchen?
She did not.
She did not tell you that. Okay. Did she tell you that she didn't even look at the knife? She just walked up the stairs, looked down, and closed the door and locked it?
She did not.
Did she tell you that she was scared that somebody would come into the room?
So this is where we're getting into the details. And I think these are things that she told to a different evaluator. And I think we're going to get to that maybe on Monday because they ended court early. Court was only 2.5 hours on Friday. Court ended early because I think they had experts coming in. I was surprised when the state rested on Thursday. I was like, oh, like we're okay. So when the state rested around, I think 4 or 5 o'clock on Thursday, I was wondering if they were going to call Z, Brian, Benyamin. I was wondering if they were going to call any of the other women. I was not sure what was going to happen. I think they called Jason because Jason's in custody and they could make sure that he came. Remember, this is a nomadic group. It would probably be extremely hard to, I don't know what state that, and please don't research, like I'm not gonna, I don't care. But they are a nomadic group that doesn't have roots. So it probably would have been difficult to base the case on Z because he could just not show up and then be in contempt of court, but you wouldn't want to base your entire trial on that. They had access to Jason. Jason was incarcerated. They could bring him to their jail. And then, so I think that might be why they called him. Now, if the defense calls anybody else, they might call one of the wives or both. They might call Z, but I think they would show up on the defense side. If the state called them, I don't know if they would have shown up. Those are just my thoughts.
The room, but she didn't lock the door.
She did not.
Did she tell you that she played a lot of video games and she knew that if you stabbed someone in video games, they die immediately?
She did not.
Right. Did she tell you that she fed Hannah, breastfed Hannah, and then laid her down on the bed?
She did not.
Did she tell you that at that time Hannah was happy?
She did not.
Did she tell you that she laid her down and stabbed her in the throat?
She did not.
Did she tell you that she stabbed her once, but she wasn't dead? She was just quiet and bleeding out.
She told me that she stabbed her.
Okay. Did she tell you after she stabbed Hannah once, she stabbed herself in the throat 3 times?
She told me that she stabbed herself.
Okay. Did she tell you that at that moment she was standing there wondering why they weren't dying?
I don't remember that.
Did she tell you that she was confused at that moment because they were supposed to die immediately?
No,
She did not?
no, I don't have no recollection of her saying that.
All right. And did she tell you after she was confused about why they weren't dying immediately, she went back over to Hannah and stabbed her in the neck again?
She did not.
I think the jury was probably shocked to hear that. And I think they're bringing that up to this expert to see how the expert responds, because that's, if I was on the jury, that's not a in the moment situation for me. That's all I can say about that one. And that's what I gave y'all the trigger warning for.
And did she tell you that when Benyamin broke through the door, that's when she tried to stab herself in the heart in her chest?
I know that she did subsequently stab herself in the chest after stabbing herself in the throat, but the specific timing of it, I don't recall.
Okay. And if she had made those statements to another doctor in this case, would you agree that her memory was substantially intact?
Sounds like it.
And you didn't inquire about those details, or she didn't give them?
I didn't specifically inquire about the blow by blow. I talked to her about what thoughts and feelings and experiences that she was having leading up to and during the event.
Okay. All right. We talked a lot about her delusions, and you indicated that just because you have a delusion or a delusion disorder doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be held criminally responsible, right?
You have a delusion that the sky is really purple, and that doesn't mean that you needed to go and shop with a 6-pack of beer. So no.
Okay. So I want to talk to you specifically about
And so, Sarah, I have testified in family court multiple times. And the person that calls you is normally very friendly to you. You normally prep with the person that calls you. I do think they probably did a deposition, so she was probably aware that some of this was coming. I don't know if the state went into those types of questions. In this trial, there have not been that many objections. Like, the objections have just been when it was absolutely necessary. Like, to me, I thought the defense let Jason go on and on and on, but it made him look less credible. I don't know. Like, I don't know who Jason's testimony helps. If you have not seen Jason's testimony and you would like to just like see me like what to pull my hair out, that was my last video that I did. Jason is, well, in my opinion, he came off psychopathic. He came off narcissistic. I think he is intelligent, but he uses words wrong. And Sarah, I think you asked why Jason is in jail. So Jason is someone that traveled with the group. Okay. So Jason is just somebody that traveled with the group. To me, he sounded like the enforcer. That's how it sounded to me. And he's in jail for threatening to unalive somebody. And in another case where he was incarcerated for and pled guilty to threatening to unalive someone. So he alleges that the woman that he bought the CBD from, that she stole $1,600 from her. And he told her, if I ever see you again, I will end you. And then Jason says, like, that was not a threat to, like I'm like, sir, like, that statement could be interpreted as a threat to, like, I would press charges. If somebody said that, that's illegal. You can't say things like that to people. Like, his rap sheet is ridiculous. And like, he is just, and I considered, because he said, if you go back to day one of trial, not on Court TV's coverage, day one of trial, the state, before the jury comes out, the state and defense are talking about the fact that Jason has said that once he has a mic, it's going to be his show. and he has these messages that he wants to get across, and he has these beliefs that he wants to say to the world, because he would be asked a direct question and his answer would have nothing to do with the question that he just asked. Like, he would just spout off these ridiculous things. And he might have admitted to some crimes on his direct, but like that's not, because I thought for some of that he could have pled the fifth, and he decided not to. Like, he was just so happy to have a mic. Because he told the male defense attorney, "Why are you obsessed with me?" Oh my gosh. Like, it was the worst. So if you haven't seen that and you like my reactions, you will like that video. I have it linked down in the description. We're almost done with this one.
I'm going to try to do a modern day flip chart here, so bear with me. We will complete this together. All right. Can you see this on your screen, Peter, on the screen you're on?
It's on.
Okay.
Just warm it up.
All right. All right. I want to talk about what delusions she indicated she was suffering from on December the 8th of 2020. And I want you to tell me what they are, specifically what the particular delusion was, and whether that related more to her general worldview or whether that related to Hannah and the acts that she committed against.
So they are going to break down, this is the delusion, and this is either the general worldview or this relates to Hannah. So they are going to go through this. I'm going to try to see if I could skip ahead to when it's done, but okay, we'll just watch it.
Against Hannah.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay.
But you're presuming that a person who's mentally ill has got something that's this easily definable. There's a lot more mud in this water than a box over here and a box over there. So I will do my best, but
Well, you have used the broad term, she suffered from delusions. And this jury is going to have to make findings about what particular delusions and how those related to the act. So I need you to try in terms of your professional capacity and in terms of the information you collected and what Ms. Driver specifically reported, because whether she had a delusion is not the issue. The issue is what the particular delusion was.
I understand.
So if you could tell me what the particular delusion was, and on December the 8th of 2020, I don't need to talk about her delusions from childhood, what her delusions were on December the 8th of 2020, and whether those related to and were connected to the act of murdering Hannah, or whether those were more worldview delusions.
Okay. She had delusions of reference.
Okay.
That don't appear to be related in any way to their worldview or religion. So I would put it under the particular delusion connected to the act.
And what delusions are you discussing?
Those are the delusions that everything in the world was telling her that she needed to kill herself and her daughter. That that's how she was interpreting things that people said, things that people did, objects in the environment.
Okay. So just a general, everything was telling her to do it.
Well, she had specific things that she mentioned. She mentioned the people at the 12 tribes talking about accepting death.
Okay.
And she interpreted that as being a specific sign that not only was she supposed to do that, but that this was the time. Well, she said something along the lines that she was like, oh, yeah, okay, that's it then. This is the time.
Okay.
So people talking about death, seeing knives in her vicinity. She had been talking about that both before and during the event. She talked about, those are the two biggest ones. She talked about a whole bunch of other things, odd beliefs about the world that may have been things that her husband taught her. I don't really know much about his belief system that he's set up.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about there being only 169,000 people in the world, and that everybody else is a demon-controlled robot or something like that.
Can we talk for a minute about the difference between a delusion and a bizarre belief?
Mm-hmm.
You use the word conspiracy on direct. There's a difference between like a delusion and like a conspiracy theory. So when you're having like a group mentality, like a cult, and they all subscribe to like a particular set of beliefs, and you're not just evaluating one person's mental state, but a collective belief, that doesn't necessarily have to be a delusion, even if it's a fixed belief that is seemingly completely disconnected from reality.
Generally speaking, but if you take a set of instructions and a set of circumstances in which the only information that a person who already is delusional, and give them that information, just because it's consistent with the information doesn't mean that it's not playing on her delusions, increasing her delusions. She already had delusions that were paranoid, that people were out to get her. So when you add on top of that instruction that is firmly rooted in this guy's power and ability to say, your paranoia is correct. The paranoia you already have is accurate. Your parents are working with the CIA. They're out to get you. Everybody's out to get you. That does not help a pre-existing delusional situation. So yes, it could just be a firmly held world belief, a religious belief. Certainly, some people don't believe other religions and think that's weird that people believe the things that they believe. But in this particular case, you're talking about a woman who was already damaged. She was already delusional, and you pile more false information on top of that, and you can exacerbate that existing delusional set. And so you can make delusions worse. You're more likely to believe the information that's given to you if you're already delusional, if you're already paranoid, and they say, oh, yeah, but you're not paranoid. The CIA is really after you. You start to believe that. And if that's all you hear, that's everything that's everybody around you. And that's how cults work generally. I'll give you that. That's how religious movements work. That's how all of those conspiracy theories work. But the problem is that in Chloe Driver's case, there's clear evidence, self-report, which is supported by other information, that she already had delusional beliefs, that she was already susceptible to that. So they were just made worse by the situation. So while that may be a firmly held religious belief, it's also possible that it's delusional in her case, because not every sovereign citizen is crazy, but some sovereign citizens are crazy in the vernacular.
And I don't love the term crazy, and she even corrects it that like that's just the vernacular, but
Sure. And crazy and criminally insane are not the same.
Not the same thing. I know.
Right.
I understand.
And crazy and subject to criminal responsibility are not the same thing.
That's correct.
So I want to go back to this. With regard to her thought process on December the 8th of 2020, based on her self-report, your evaluation, your review of the file, were there any other particular delusions, and what were they, that were connected to her act of murdering Hannah?
The other one that I would say would be the magical thinking that she experienced. And that is also related to the religion that she was being taught, that she was being fed on a daily basis. But she was being told that she had the capacity, the ability to change the world, cause pain or solve pain, cause a catastrophe or save the world from a catastrophe. And she already had magical thinking before this. She had beliefs that she could read minds. There was all other things going on with her before all this happened. So if you put this in there, and she also had an experience of having been punished for not stopping the pain, not correcting whatever she did wrong. She talked about having walked the wrong way and been told she had to do a weird dance or walk backwards to make it right, that she had this power to make it right and also the power to make it wrong. Another time she talked about being punished for not putting out the right energy by being forced to stay in bed for 24 hours, not allowed to use the restroom. She urinated on herself, that kind of thing. She talked another time about when she was pregnant, she was put into an RV with or a trailer of some sort with all the windows blocked, and the room was completely dark. And that while she was in there, she was terrified, that she was screaming, that she was seeing things, that it really messed with her.
oh, so they did the sensory deprivation while she was pregnant? Oy, oy. And it should never be against your will. One of the biggest things with sensory deprivation, and we talked about some of those pods, or there are some, because where I live, there are some spas that offer a sensory deprivation room, and you can always leave. Like you can always like you have an hour, but if after 20 minutes, if it's too much, because in that dark space when even somebody that's not psychotic can kind of start to um, experience some intense visions or intense things, like even if people aren't psychotic. But to put somebody that's in a fragile mental state through something like that,
So they messed her up.
Was
And
that a delusion on December the 8th of 2020 that related to the act of Hannah Driver?
so I'm getting there.
Okay.
So the ideas of reference, not the ideas of reference, the magical thinking, this belief that not only can she affect the world, but she must affect the world, or else she's going to get punished. That's not necessarily delusional. The punishment is not necessarily delusional, but the belief that she could actually change the world is delusional. And then you add that to her belief that she was sinning, that her daughter was sin, that both of them were being told that they were not right, that they were not supposed to be there, that they needed to be gone. That combination of symptoms was all at play at the time that she committed this act.
And so with sensory deprivation, it can be like it can be like a meditation thing. So, but that's where everybody has to do what works best for them. It would not be good for somebody that's claustrophobic. It would not be good for somebody that has like intense fears of the dark or anything like that. Yeah, it's a small, with like a small amount of water in it. I think it's called float in our area. It's something like that. And yeah, like, and so that's why I won't do it, because I would just get so bored. I would probably leave after 20. I don't know that I could do 20 minutes in something like that. Like with no phone, like I don't know that I could do it. But some people find it relaxing. You can Google it. Like it really is a thing. It really is a thing that people do. But I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying it's something that people do. But this group, because Jason said he did this for 18 days. I think it might have been more, whatever a number of hours for 18 days. That's how long Jason did it. He didn't just say 18 days. Jason was insufferable, in my opinion, because like instead of if he was asked how old a person was, he would give their birthday. And it's because he has a photogenic, I think is that the word he used? I think he said photogenic memory instead. Like I just
And she made statements that she believed she was sinning because she was married to a man with more than one wife. She had a baby with a man that was married to someone else, correct?
Those were some things that were included in, I think, her searches on her internet.
Okay. And the statements she made about Hannah were that she felt like she was passing her sins on to Hannah when she breastfed her, right?
That's correct. And she talked about downloading her sin and pouring her sin. It was sort of like a generational sin kind of thing.
But did he say photogenic or did he say photographic? Because I thought he said photogenic. Y'all correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. I'm almost positive Jason said photogenic because we were all laughing about it in the chat. I don't think he said photographic. I think he said photo. He said exactly. He said he has a partially photogenic memory. Okay, I think that was when he was talking to a woman. It's because he doesn't think women are smart. He doesn't think women make good leaders. Like Jason, it was, yeah, he said photogenic. He did not say photographic. And I say things wrong all the time. Okay. So just because somebody says something wrong, but like when you say stuff wrong and you're up there acting like you're superior to everybody, I get to laugh at it a little.
All right. And as it relates to what her particular delusions were on December the 8th, 2020, that related to the act of why she murdered Hannah, can you think of any other specifics that we can put on this list?
Those were the ones that really stood out to me. I'm sure there were other thought processes involved, but those are the ones that I really remember.
Okay. Did she ever indicate at any point in any material that you have reviewed that she was afraid of Hannah?
No.
Did she ever indicate that she thought Hannah was a threat to her?
No.
Did she ever indicate that she felt like she had to defend herself against Hannah?
No.
I have nothing further.
Redirect.
Yes, that's just briefly. Can I leave that up?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So, just want to clarify, as Ms. Crawford was asking you questions, she was typing in here that the save or harm the world, walking the wrong way, having the right to walk backwards to make it right. You actually described those as applying to the delusional aspect of Ms. Driver, correct?
I think it's probably both. It's one of those ones that maybe you should have a over the line kind of thing, because she was experiencing those thoughts at the time, according to the way she described it all to me. And it is relevant to how I thought about what happened, because there was an element of I could be punished and I could experience bad things. I could cause harm to other people if I don't follow the instructions that everything is telling me that I need to kill myself and my child.
Sorry, I'm a horrible typer, apparently. And I can't spell.
I like him.
Goodness.
Same. Wow. I'm a good typer.
So maybe they apply in both categories.
I mean, these things kind of bleed together when you're talking about somebody who's got a mental illness and is fed odd beliefs.
Now, Dr. Garrett, to be clear, you do not believe that Ms. Driver was suffering, even though she was suffering from a mental illness, she was not in a 24-hour, 7-day state of delusion. Is that fair?
Nobody really is. Symptoms come and go. They fluctuate. They have, they can be episodic. They can have periods of time where they're really bad and they might get better for a while and they get bad again.
And there are specific things that would trigger her particular delusions that she was experiencing as you described it.
That's the way it seemed, and things would happen in the world that she would interpret as being directed specifically at her, and that would trigger distress.
When she's interviewed after she's arrested, whether in the hospital or at the jail by law enforcement, or rather interviewed at the hospital by medical staff or by law enforcement, you would agree with me at that point in time was not the same day as the day of this incident, right?
At a minimum, I believe it had to have been the next day. She was in procedures and sedated the first day, according to the psychiatric intake.
Were you aware at the hospital that she was provided fentanyl when she first got to the hospital?
I did see that they gave her a lot of medications to help treat her pain and calm her down.
Those medications could help her calm down and return to, I think, what kind of you described as more of a sane state. Is that fair?
Yes.
It is fair to say that anyone in a sane state.
I'm going to object to the leading nature of the questions. This is his witness.
Ooh, because you're objecting to leading. I'm going to answer this question. Do I believe in her ability to freely leave the cult, her especially with her. And so I don't know that she ever met Giuliana. I think that person and baby was gone before she was a part of that before she met him. I think that happened before Chloe. But I wonder how Z talks about that situation. And because that happened, he's likely more vigilant with the women. And I don't know if that first child had appropriate papers. Like I don't know any of those specifics. I do not believe that she was able to leave with the baby. I think he was going to make that extremely hard. I think she would have had to get support from a domestic violence shelter or because she would need a lawyer to help her. But it was going to be because they move around so much. As soon as she started trying to start a court process, I think he would have left. I don't think she would have been able to leave. I think it would have been hard. So I do have compassion for her situation. I've worked with people in DV situations before. Um, uh, I also don't think that her actions were right. I think Hannah had every right to still be here, and because I don't know if the family could have helped get something like but I think there was this thing where it was like, I'm not gonna live without my baby. And if she had escaped, because he had been to her parents' house, so where was she gonna go? She would have had to have some degree of safety from him. Because and it sounds like there was some DV as well. Like we're not getting into Z's behavior. Okay. Like because she had a black eye. Like I don't want to gloss over that. And even the police officer thought that there was coercive control within the relationship. And the police officer is getting mad with him on the phone. Like the police officer is like, why are you separating the girls? Like, why are you controlling them? The police officer sounded upset to me. And I thought it was really interesting that the hospital, when they have a victim of a crime, even if self-inflicted, that they don't enter their real name into the system. It waits a few days for it to automatically populate, and a part of that is the protection of that individual. But I don't think she'll ever say anything. I don't know that she'll ever turn on him legally. I don't think she will. But those are just my thoughts.
Does someone in a sane state understand the difference between right and wrong?
Typically,
Does
I mean,
some,
what somebody thinks when they're doing well versus when they are in distress, and even take out psychosis. If you're in real distress, you're stressed, you're traumatized, you're scared, your memory is different, your way of interpreting the world is different. People who have a traumatic experience may block it out for a period of time and then it may come back. Even some of the statements that were made to the police in the investigative summary talked about how she wouldn't even really remember that she would snap and lose all sense of herself, and then would apologize afterwards, and she didn't even know it had happened. So there is, once you come out of that state, you can look back on something, hindsight's 20/20 for all of us, and say, oh, that was wrong, that was bad. But at the time, maybe not, who knows?
how would you expect someone that is sane to react when being told that they've killed their daughter?
Distraught.
Would they express
Scared.
remorse?
I'm sure they would. I would.
Are you aware that Ms. Driver did?
Yes.
Mr. Cropper asked you about explaining the NGRI findings and conditions in order to make that a defense in court. You discussed that with her, correct?
Yes.
That was discussed with her after you had already talked to her about all of her mental health background, her background with Ben Michael, with Ben Michael, leading up to December.
I always get mental health history before I tell it to anybody about the NGRI or any of the other defenses or plea options, because I don't want them to change their answers based on what the criteria is for.
Did you have any reason to believe that she was telling you these things in order to fit this narrative of an NGRI defense?
I'm sure there was some element of that, but not the driving force. I mean, there's always some element of that, that she believes that she knew she was getting an evaluation for that purpose. So I'm sure there was some element of that. But all of her statements were consistent over time, consistent to me, consistent to other people, and consistent with what other people said about her. And so there was a lot of evidence that the symptoms she talked to me about were things that existed before, during, and after the alleged crime.
In your statement about the trigger of the incident that day, about the clean shirt and her not feeling worthy of a clean shirt, you're not saying that that is the specific thing that made her do it. Really, it's a combination of things she experienced over the months leading up to that day,
Yes.
including the 12 tribes that morning, including the treatment through those religious cult group aspect, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay.
So they're going to let the jury go home early for the day. I am going to center myself. There we go. And then let me make myself all the way. There we go. So did they do a pediatric evaluation? So I do not believe that she grew up in a group like this. It sounds like they moved around, but they didn't explain why she moved around a lot. If that was military or they didn't explain why she moved around a lot. There's at least, I think there should be at least 2 more mental health experts. I don't know if it'll just be one, and I don't know if she will testify. I do not think that she's going to testify. Um, a lot has come in through other sources, and I don't know how she would do on the stand, because the state would ask her directly, were you jealous? They would ask her directly a lot of different things. I really enjoy covering the not guilty by reason of insanity cases, because mental health is so complex, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea about people with borderline personality disorder, or people with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or bipolar disorder. Often people with these diagnoses are greater risk to themselves than they are to others. I do believe that she loved her daughter. I don't know that she saw a safe way out. And that's kind of the heartbreaking part, because it does look like she was researching how she could leave, and to me it sounds like she got hopeless. Now, does that mean that she was legally insane? Based on that expert, I don't I so if I was on the jury, the statement she made right after was a lot about jealousy, and that expert really didn't go into the dynamics of the group and how she felt about the other women and how she felt about being in a polygamous relationship. They didn't get into that. um and so and for the individuals that are a risk to others, that is where I like talking about safety and ways that people can seek safety. There is a great book called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Because I saw somebody mentioned growing up with a disabled parent that has borderline personality disorder. I've worked with children that have parents with personality disorders, and it takes an impact. It takes a toll on the children. It really does. And these are treatable things. So when I'm working with a parent with a personality disorder, we are going to work on skills. We're going to work on them not taking things personally, that their child setting a boundary doesn't mean that their child doesn't love them or like them. And that we have to set up some emotional boundaries, because often individuals with borderline personality disorder, they often can pick up on the emotions of others. So like the smallest thing they might interpret as you hate me, when really it might be like I'm disappointed, or like it's not that I hate you. And so, oh, Patricia Barnes, that's super sweet. Because I respect a lot of psychologists on here. And so that is super sweet. Thank you for that. Welcome to all the new subs. If anybody subbed from this video, here I cover the psychological aspects of crime, but we also talk about like living with certain diagnoses, or if you're a parent of somebody with a particular diagnosis. Like I like doing the educational part as well. And so we do a little bit of everything here. I try to warn you in the beginning, if it's not related to a case, then I don't cover it. But any case I do cover, there has to be something for us to learn. Okay. Yes. So on my Amazon, and I will pull it up. So I have and you do not have to buy it from the Amazon shop. I have all of my favorite books in one place. So even if you Google Dr. Patrice Berry Amazon shop, my shop, oh wait a minute, no, that's my book. So that too, aw, I have a book. I did the Audible myself. All right. So I have self-help books. Let's make sure that this is correct. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's make this a little bigger. All right, so in the self-help books, I love Dr. Ramani. Everybody doesn't have to. I do. Somebody recommended the book Dare, and it's about coping with anxiety. If you know somebody that might have like a trauma bond, but Dr. Laura Copley did a book, Loving You is Hurting Me, a new approach to healing trauma bonds and creating authentic connection. There's also, let me see, gonna keep scrolling down. I really love the Set Boundaries, Find Peace book. And then here's the Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. So let me share this tab. So, and I heard the author speak at a conference. I didn't love, like, she's a great author. I didn't love her as a speaker personally. So Dr. Ramani is a phenomenal speaker. And I am going to listen to, I'm going back to a conference that I went to last year. And yes, I'm going to sign up for her workshop again. And I will bring back any of the new tools or any of the new things. And so, yeah, anybody that has questions about my hair routine, I have some of my favorite products there. You do not have to buy them because find wherever you find the cheapest prices. Okay, it is an affiliate link. If you do buy anything through there, I get like a small commission. But I have a full-time job. I make money from this fun stuff I do on the side. So if you find it cheaper at Walmart or someplace else, buy it where it works best. I do not have any sponsors. So anything I talk about, anything I like, it's because I tried it and I like it. So I use Factor. Factor is like a meal delivery service because HelloFresh, you have to actually cook it. And I despise cooking. So Factor, it comes pre-made and I'm not paid. Like I enjoy it. I use it. I think Emily D. Baker has a referral code. Like I think she has like a coupon thing for there. So most of the books that are on the list, if it's available in Audible, click it. And because I do Audible, I have a processing disorder. So when I read, like I have to read a sentence over and over. That's why when I read on stream, sometimes I might skip a word, I might read something wrong, or if I'm reading a comment, I might read it wrong sometimes. When words go into my brain, funny things happen sometimes. And so I do Audible. Nice. And so that's why I recorded the book myself. My book, because I wanted to make sure that it was accessible for people like me that have trouble reading. So, yeah, and I don't finish books either. So like I get like a few chapters from the end and then I move on to the next book. I'm super weird. Yes. And so I like Factor. And if I can figure out, because they send me free codes, like if I can find a way to gift those, I will. I haven't found a way to do it yet. But if I find a way to gift some of those free codes, I will. Not to our knowledge. I think the defense would bring it up if that was true. Uh-oh. Did I do something wrong? My Zoom, I zoomed all the way in. Okay, good. So if she was, I think the defense would have brought it up. I do not believe that there's any evidence that she was. I think she was vulnerable. Okay, she met him when she was 17, and so I think she was vulnerable. And often narcissists love bomb. So I don't know Z. So I don't know him, But I know cult leaders, and often people that recruit people to their group, they often love bomb you at first. And what is love bombing? So love bombing is when they first meet you, it's welcoming. It's the best thing ever. They need you in their group because they love you. Like day one, they love you and they'll do anything for you and everything is phenomenal at first. And then things, because that's part of the coercive control cycle, is at first it's like this quick sh- but it's not a deep connection. So to me, relationships should grow. So the relationship I had with my husband, when I first met him on our very first date, I felt like I was like, "Oh my gosh," like our very first date, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm going to marry him." Now, did I meet other people where the first time I met them, I was like, "Oh, well, I don't know." Like, so but what happened is over time, over meeting, over all those things, our relationship got depth. We had difficult conversations. We respect one another. Actual respect and not that BS Jason talked about with like us, the women are allowed to talk about their feelings to him in the morning and they can disagree with him, but he ultimately gets to decide at the end. Like it was like super, super duper. Ugh. And sometimes, so narcissist can make a person feel very loved at first, but you don't realize that they view you as a means to an end and it's not actually you. Like they love the idea of you, but not actually you. And once she had a child, I th- I think he viewed her and the child as his property that he could then dictate what happened. And so I'm guessing because I don't know what happened, but like that's just what it sounds like. And I think that was a very difficult situation, especially for a vulnerable person. I cannot tell you most the most common situation, my individuals with borderline personality disorder, they often end up with a narcissist because the narcissist needs to be needed. So individuals with borderline personality disorder, they need to be loved, and but the narcissist will withhold it. So they'll give it sometimes, and it'll be, but then sometimes they will withhold it. They might ignore. They might use like weird punishments and stuff. And so that's a common like pairing that I personally see when we connect in trauma and not a healthy relationship. So yeah, it's very conditional. It is not unconditional at all. And so those are just some of my thoughts. Hey, I need to go to the bathroom. Like, that's like real talk. I appreciate you all. I'm gonna do a members only stream and then probably a regular stream on Tuesday. Let me look at my schedule for Monday because I think I'm busy on Monday. Yep, I have a full day on Monday, and so I might. Yeah, I'll probably record maybe around a regular video for everybody. We will review testimony on Tuesday. All right. I hope y'all have a good one. Enjoy your day. Bye.